Amen.
Thank you, sir. Ben, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
I am good.
Can you actually give me 20 seconds? I need to send a message to
Of
my
course.
wife.
Yeah,
Give me just a second and I'll be right with you. I don't know what's
no
up.
problem. Hey, Dawn. I hope all is well. Happy you made it as well. You'll excuse me if an alarm goes on and we have to shut this off in case there is a missile attack.
Yeah.
Hopefully we won't have that. Today was fairly.
Now I can't hear you. No, I was muted. You were muted.
Today was fairly quiet.
Okay.
With regards to missiles, which is good.
It's good. Let's hope that it will continue.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. If that's, I mean, like, yes, I hope there's less missiles. I will gladly sit in this bunker, though, if I feel like, a just war is happening and, like, it's for a purpose. So
it's very confusing. I honestly don't really have a read on what's going on, which I guess is part of. So maybe it's good. If I don't understand it, other people don't understand it. So that's.
We were talking about this a little in Jacob's stream, as much as one can. Yeah, it's a very, very difficult situation. We won't dive too deep into that. However, you hope that as we pray that Hashem should give Hashiva Shaftenu Kaviroshana, right? Bring back good judges and people, and Benoten Nachon Dat, right? Our hope that Hashem gives our leaders, all world leaders, even the bad actors. We hope that they have the good mind to either calm down from the tree they're on. We hope that everyone understands the decisions they need to make. You want to add the last week's summary?
Yeah.
Okay. Take it away.
Let me just.
It's actually a new prompt, which I'm not happy with, but I can't find the old one.
Too bad. This looks fine. Okay, Berikat Refuah. So we talked about Refuah last time?
Yeah, well, I took it off actually over here. We actually did the ending portion of we were talking about redemption, right. And then we moved into Refuah.
Okay.
So why healing is the
eighth blessing? Yeah, I can go over it. Sorry.
Baksha, go ahead.
Maharal says 7 is nature. 7 being 7 days, or the number 7 is nature.
Creation, right?
8. The number 8 is signifies beyond nature.
Right. When the temple was built, it's built on the 8th day. We spoke about in the past also how that's why the temple keeps on falling, because it's an 8th day creation in a 7th day world, right? Once we elevate ourselves to a 7-day mindset and atmosphere, then a temple could actually be enduring for a long time. But that's one of the reasons why it's also the 8th. Maybe we'll talk about it again just a little in the next blessing also, because there the order matters. But let's continue.
Right. Okay. Therefore, illness is natural. Healing is transcendence.
Right. And healing is not just fixing; it's lifting reality above its teva. Right. We also mentioned that. I see it's not here. That also here in this blessing, it also mentions God's name again inside the blessing. Mm-hmm. And like you need like a little extra push over here. Where, like we don't want the God of nature, Elohim. We want the Tetragrammaton. We want Shem Havaya ultimately to be involved because we understand that we need real saving and we need more than just the natural. We were talking about how there's like entropy in the world, but also inside us, our body knows how to heal. Our bodies heal themselves. So there's like a hint towards us wanting to move forward, but we're asking when we're sick, we're asking from God to intervene as well, to give us like a little extra boost.
Yeah. Okay. Healing versus declining. Healing versus decline. The world naturally moves towards breakdown. Entropy, I guess.
Right, exactly.
Somer Hashem lechol anuflim. God sustains and lifts. Healing,
and that means that God also sees himself as that's like, it's not like he's doing us a favor. That's also part of his job. He's there to support us as well in this journey. And those who fall don't, it also could mean obviously spiritually, but could also mean falling like physically, like that they are no longer in good standing or in good health.
Mm-hmm. So healing is a divine push against entropy, restoring life. Body versus soul. Body tends towards illness and decline. Soul tends toward life.
Bring Kirk out here.
We experience illness physically, so we pray for healing that comes from above nature.
Right. Okay.
Why say Ofenu Hashem?
Ofenu Hashem.
Hashem. Medicine helps, but only partially.
So we were talking about why we mentioned Hashem's name again, right? Why are we saying, why? Obviously, just say Refa'enu, right? He doesn't need to say Hashem again. Only God can bring a complete healing. True healing means not temporary repair, but ultimate restoration, right? And I spoke about this, how the Rav Kook famously talks about how just like we take it seriously to try to heal, so too, even conquering death, right? As I believe they are starting human trials now on longevity medicine. There's been, I think, a 75 to 80% success rate on reversing aging in animals. Mm-hmm. And starting this with humans as well, with Dr. Sinclair, a very interesting person. The question is what we're going to do with it. But the point being is like even that's something that we're looking to conquer as well in a certain sense, right? The deep idea of Guf and Neshama, the real Pele, is the connection between body and soul. This is coming into relation with, by the way, I don't like this because it's too condensed almost. We spoke about the blessing of Borei Nefashot, right? When we come out of the restroom, and it ends with Mafli La'asot, right? That God creates like this wonder, and that is healing happens at the meeting point of the physical and the spiritual, right? That's part of the wonder that we have this physical body, but it's allowed. It's paired with a divine spiritual soul as well.
So it's like, is that like panentheism in Kabbalah?
I'm sorry?
So the idea of divine, which is immanent within the physical world, is like panentheism?
Not exactly. I'm saying in a certain sense, but because God, God is in all things. God is in everything. But I was just saying, one can get very confused with that. It's very different than what is the name?
Spinoza?
No, yeah, Spinoza is exactly. Spinoza's, God is nature in that sense. That's not what we're saying. We're saying okay. God, and the God that you meet in nature, we have a name for that. It's called Elohim, and that's one aspect of how we are introduced and interact with God. But that's not the only way. We're also into the personal.
Yeah, I mean that's why I think the Rambam says like you can't say what God is, because if you say God is nature, people will assume he's not all the other things as well, or it's like he's part of everything, so you can't. Or that's why you have to define what it isn't, or something.
Right, Karash Lila, right? That negative understanding. Why we ask for healing? Ki tihilatenu ata, not just to feel better, but to live, function, and serve Hashem properly, right? If I want to be, and we'll talk about this also in the next blessing. But all these things is, as we say, bechol drachecha da'ehu, right? In all your ways, you should understand God and you should know God, whether it's science and of course also the Torah. But in all these ways, we should be, and for sure, according to the Rambam, right? He has a great quote about understanding God through metaphysics and physics as well. So obviously we also have to understand that as well. And to do that, I need to have my all my faculties with me, right? If I have dementia, if I can't move, it makes it much more difficult for me to participate in this great world, right? So process of healing, refuah, that's for treatment, immediate treatment, and orka. This is relevant to a quote from Jeremiah, long-term recovery as well. Illness effects, there's body, there's pain, there's inner state. We want all these different elements being healed, right? And we want it all in good time, but we want this healing us as well. Wow, out of the lurk, first time. And then, well, not out of the lurk, just with me. It's a big honor to have you with me here, Stephen. So thank you. Healing must address all layers. Correct. Exactly. So like I could be physically okay, but spiritually or mentally, I'm having issues, and that's obviously not great. And we obviously see that also. I believe there's a lawsuit now happening in the States, also against Meta and Google for some girl that suffered like some sort of a serious mental depression. I don't know how that's going to play out in court, but the idea is that we see Jonathan Haidt writes about this, how there's like a 90% increase in girls' depression and suicide thoughts and lo pashut. So we obviously want healing in that sense as well. And of course, just on that note, it's not just from God. Obviously, we need to do our own work as well. But because we see it's difficult, we're asking God also to intervene. Yes, Kirk, my boy.
So this is, I think, connected to this week's Parsha, Parsha Tzav. Is that the name of the Parsha? It's because in the Parsha, it talks about this idea of intention in the sense that you have to they sacrifice the korban twice daily. So you have to have a long-term attention span. And that connects with Haidt's work about the idea that you should not have that social media companies distort people's attention span in a way that's not healthy. The idea is that you need to plan long-term.
You have to plan long term, right? The classic story of the ant and the grasshopper, and being mindful. And we go back to this very often. But again, the classic idea of when you wake up in the morning, there's a way about being mindful already how you put on your shoes, right? And that is already locking you into a mindset, which is being mindful of everything that's happening around you. And when you're doing that, you could also see how those things create a bigger tapestry for this longer road that you're ahead on. I'll just say though, Kirk, when you speak about this long road, right? I'm pausing from our prayer for a second because I'm putting on my little Zionistic hat. But while it's true that we say there's a song that we sing in Israel, which is Am Hanetzach Lo Mefached Mederech Haruka. The eternal people do not fear a long road. Having said that, it's okay for us. That's not the goal. Is not to be on the road forever. The goal is eventually to reach the destination as well. And the way I see things, I think we're moving towards that direction. But I digress. Individual versus nation. B'toch shar cholei Israel, we say healing must fit into a greater Klal Yisrael, a tov of Klal Yisrael. We spoke about how, again, even if I ask for, I understand that while I'm asking for healing for myself, I understand that I am part of a collective as well. And so while, yes, I want healing, I'm caveating that obviously in the proper hierarchy and order that God sees fit, as in if I suddenly get the thing I wanted immediately, and now I get we'll call it the bed in the hospital, right? And now someone else that was worse can't get it. So, there's a whole other calculation going on over there. And we'll talk about this in the next blessing, which is here the focus is on Israel, right? Not the world. Right now we're talking personally towards Israel, because later on, as we'll see, there's a more general blessing for the rest of the world as well. And the final element of here, Rafeh Chalomo Israel, God really wants to heal. Tefillah doesn't create healing. It opens us to receive it, right? Which is, there's always this mode that is sort of happening. The question is, do you have the right, are you playing the right, or operating the right software to be able to see those things, and then realize how that blessing and God's healing is also there, that you could participate in. However, again, it requires also being in the proper orientation, both mentally and of course physically. Any last thoughts on this? Also, actually, I do want to read something that Yosef shared on Discord, which is something that if I didn't say is what I was trying to say, but he shared it beautifully. Heal me so I may save myself from judging my illness. Save me so I may heal myself from judging my recovery. Pray through me so you may become my praise. May I believe in this healing from you. May I believe in this healing from you as much as I believe in the sicknesses from you. And in both, may I know your compassion. Right? This is beautiful understanding. Also, we talk about this often of Gamzula Tova, right? This is also for the good, which not only through praying am I also participating with God in this praise, but I also recognize that both the sickness and the healing is from him. And ultimately, these are all for the good.
Yeah. The only thing I have to say about the final words on the thing is that it's important to have this balance between universalism and particularism, because Jews are not just another nation; they are the elect nation. So there has to be a certain level of, Jews have to prioritize being a nation unto the nations, right? But then, at the other hand, you can't be completely segregated off from the rest of the world, because if you're segregated off from the rest of the world, you can't be a light unto the nations.
That is yes. So in broad strokes, that is correct. I think, like, obviously, again, our mission is universal, right? So like the focus is, while you are correct that we have a certain responsibility, the responsibility is placed outwards, right? I'm saying all of it is for us being Kedoshim to you, for being holy and participating in that way. It's in order that light could be shined and offered to everyone, everywhere.
Yeah, and when you look at how influential Jews have been, from philosophers like Spinoza and Popper to scientists like Einstein and Bohr, and novelists like Kafka, and the ability to tap into that Jewish spirit has led to many great wonders for the world as a whole.
I would agree with that. We're in a safe space, in a brave space.
Kirk has a lot of good words.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next blessing, Stephen, any thoughts?
Nope, just enjoying it.
Fantastic. All right. Yes,
I'll say,
Yosef, teach us.
For people who want a little bit of another key we didn't talk about last week, Abu Draham, who's a very famous commentary on the Amidah, or on all the prayers. So he points out that a lot of these prayers are actually paralleling the order of things in the beginning of Psalm 103. And it's just kind of, so for instance, for this one, so Psalm 103, verse 3 is so the forgiveness of sins is right before the healing. Then the next part actually has the redemption, and he explains why redemption is out of order. And then the next one will be the blessing of bounty of the land. So he goes through, and then after that is going to be justice, right? So actually he goes through lines 3, 4, 5, 6, and basically those 4 lines, and saying that they're actually parallel to what's happening here. So that's kind of cool. If you wanted to kind of see another hint maybe of where the structure of this comes out of.
I think let's maybe dive into that now. Well, yeah, okay. ברך עלינו אדוני אלוהינו את השנה הזאת ואת כל מיני תבואתה לטובה.
May I read in English?
Sure. ותן ברכה, right? That's during the summer, right? And during the rainy season, טל ומטר לברכה, על פני האדמה, ושבנו מטובך וברך שנתנו כשנים הטובות, ברוך אתה השם, מברך השנים. You can take it away, Kirk, if you'd like.
Bless for us Hashem our God, this year and all the varieties of its produce for goods and bestow from the
In the summer, you say blessing.
Yeah, blessing for
Or you say dew and rain for a blessing.
yeah. Upon the face of the earth, you satisfy us from your bounty and bless our year like the good years. Blessed are you, Hashem, blesser of the years.
Okay. Okay. I'm looking at a comment over here, but I'm holding strong. I'm
So
focused.
before you dive into all the
Yeah.
different things, I'll just mention what comes up to me, and I'm curious
Please.
if you have a bit about that as well. What I notice here right now, it's interesting because I read this all the time, and I never think about like noticing different things. Is that here it's talking about space and time, about space and time, because it says Barechet Hashana, this year, and Dvuata, which is more space or material. I don't know. You said, Yosef, it talks about the land. I don't know if you
Well,
refer.
it talks about to being savea, to being satiated from the produce.
From the
Yeah.
Dvua.
Yeah.
Right.
But is this like Einsteinian like physical space time, or like is that what you're getting at?
What are you talking?
No.
Sorry, what? You lost me there, Kirk.
Like, or is this is this like a physical space time, or are you saying this is like a metaphysical thing?
What I mentioned is that I just see that it talks about the year itself, but also talks about the produce, which is material. So I never thought about that specific. I think it got brought up just because Yosef also just mentioned.
I think it
the
I
land.
think it gives you it's the way I read that is it's giving you a structure that you could rely on, which is like the cyclical, the year, right? Like God also talks about how like well in relation to the rest of the world, lo ishbatu, right? This is during Noah, that there'll be a sun, there'll be a moon, the cycles will continue, but there's a sense of security with that. On the other hand, the produce is up in the air. Right, you don't know really. You're not promised that that's like I know there's going to be a winter. I know there's going to be a summer. Or at least I know that date's going to come around, or 365 days are going to go past. But what's going to be on those days, I'm not exactly sure of, and that obviously it involves me praying, me asking, me doing things. So like it's sort of setting the ground rules as well into like the reality I'm in right now. I would also say that we're not just asking for like for a good year. Right, it's a year. We want the whole productivity, like the output, the results, the material, everything. We want it aligned with the goodness in that sense. It's like Yosef said to be satiated, like we sva, right? It's equality and like abundance. We want over here. We want like the whole 9 yard. Now, generally speaking, the understanding is this is a bracha about livelihood. In Hebrew, it's called parnasah, right? And specifically, it's also rainfall, right? Because if I need rainfall to actually, at that time, definitely to allow these things to happen. Now, you could say that rain is like a little narrow, right? From like agriculture, like as far as that concerned. And Stephen, I'm sure, knows how important it is that his seasons are working properly. But I would say in the Torah worldview, right, rain is representing something that's much broader. Right, it's the connection, the interface between heaven and earth, right, between Hashem's will and human. The famous story of Choni Agel, also in the Talmud, right, demanding rain. So there's a sense over there where we also see this in the different nuschaot, right? That in the Sephardic communities, it's I would say the focus was more on rainfall. You hear more of that inside because they were living in a place where that environment was aligned for that. In Ashkenazi communities, they're living generally in more stable climates as well. So you could also see a play in there as well with how much they're focusing on it. But the focus is, I think it's like 7 or 8 times they're pushing it inside. It depends if you're doing it also in Mincha. But the tefillah is not coming also from an abstract place. That's also what's here to remind us. It's happening in a context, and there's like a historical and environmental element to this as well.
Yeah,
now,
I think.
Please.
I was just gonna say, I think that's kind of what I was talking about. What I was saying was this idea of like physical versus metaphysical. Is I'm saying that this rain is not just symbolic of like physical rain, but it's representative of also the metaphysical connection between humans and God through the abundance that He provides. Does that make sense, Yosef?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
we didn't go as deep as you did like the last time you said it around. We needed you to break it down to us a little. I do want to though focus for a second, Yosef. Maybe you could assist me with this again with the positioning in the Tfilat Amidah, right? This is really the final blessing that's focused on a certain sense on the individual that I'm praying for. And I would say there's an intentional progression over here, which is first a person like has to understand, like we're talking about like dat. The Gemara gives a whole explanation also about the avot and why those first blessings are what they are. But then we have, once I understand, I could actually do tshuva, right? I could repent, I could return. Then I could receive forgiveness. Then I could receive healing. Then there's like a redemption from the suffering that I'm dealing with. Like we're talking about the individual, like Yosef was focusing on even more last week, which is like the individual redemption. And then once I'm done all that, I could finally reach livelihood, right? So I have to really move into this, a person basically can't fully participate in like a national redemption if their basic life is like unstable ultimately. And parnasah is not like, it's not like the highest value, but ultimately it's the platform on where like I could get like these higher values are possible. I need that stable undergrowth.
A little bit like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is it called, or what is it? Yeah, that you have to take care of, whether it's well-being first, and then sustain like financial sustenance. So it's something like that. It's like be able to take care of the foundation so you can build on it. But both from an individual and national perspective.
I would also say it's akin to Derech Eretz a little, Kadmala Torah, which is all this experience could only happen somewhere, right? Like there needs to be a context. Like I talk about this often about the Torah, which it's supposed to be experienced ultimately in the land of Israel, right? Like there's places for these things to happen. So this too, as far as blessing and rain, like we're in a context that we have to be aware of. So obviously I need to make sure that those things, I'm not saying I want abundance just because I want abundance. I want abundance because again, that allows me then to do all these other things. And I'm only asking for abundance after I repented and I made sure that people are healthy. So I do have my own hierarchy. But then once I've got all those bases covered, now I have to realize how I need to act in the world. And to do that, I need to eventually get on the bus. And for that, I need money.
Right, you need orientation first, and then
right.
So there's
yes, go ahead.
I'll add there's a very weird thing about this bracha. Why is it the 9th bracha? The Talmud has this really weird comment. Rabbi Alexandri says it has to do with protecting us from those who would raise the price of food. And he connects it, he says, and the reason it's number 9 is because in the 9th Psalm, there's this little phrase, it's almost like what we would have thought was a throwaway phrase, that's break the arm of the wicked. Shvor zoroa rasha. And it's the 9th Psalm, and it's the 9th blessing, and you should break the arm of the wicked. The people who are wicked are the people who raise prices of food in the market. And therefore, like, they should be broken. And that's what this Psalm is about, that's what this prayer is about, which is such a weird reading. Because to me, this is it's about bounty and plenty and getting, and being able to like have money to like live one's life, and is a very material blessing. There are also more spiritual readings about like this is a spiritual blessing and bounty too, fine. Like, but I would never have gone into like this. This is actually a blessing to like protect us from the people who raise prices in the market.
But why is the location the 9th?
Because it's in the 9th. It's in the 9th parak.
Oh, the 9th Psalm. Okay.
So since David put it in the 9th parak of Tehillim, it's going to be our 9th one, because there's some like and this we don't have other mappings to say the first bracha is the first parak in Tehillim and the second bracha is the second parak. We don't have that.
Right.
But
No,
for
but
some reason,
there are other. I mean, like we spoke last time about the reason why it's the 8th, right?
Yep.
Like,
And the 8th is because of circumcision, and the 7th because of Geula. We've had that, but here that's in the same section of Talmud. So here, why is it the 9th? And like maybe this is a stretch. Maybe it's like I don't know why it's a stretch, but the best thing I can come up with is the 9th parak of Tehillim, and he mentions breaking the arm of the wicked, and somehow I see this being about the arm. It could be about in the period where he's having this discussion, like food prices are very high, or people are gouging in the market, right? So going to the Bible study a couple weeks ago with price gouging, like, and this was like a huge problem. It's a funky thing to read after you go through the other steps of these, like the rest of the progression makes so much sense. The rest of the progression is okay. Like I have my knowledge and my wanting to repent, and now I've repented, and now I've healed, and now I'm going to destroy the wicked, but stop the wicked. But the stopping the wicked is in 3 brachas, right? Like, we're going to deal with the wicked later. It's like, why? Like, it's funny that it's here, but yeah.
It reminds me of though, in Numbers in Bamidbar, it says Ve'vercha Hashem v'yishmerecha, right? Beautiful blessing that we have from the priests. Now, Rashi, I believe, says over there, right? Yevarchecha, which means that you'll have an abundance of nechasim, of stuff. And B'yishmerecha shelo yavo elecha shodadim litol mamulcha. People are going to come and take from you, right? I'm saying, so you were also talking about price gouging. I'm saying there's another element over here, which is, again, it's not an abstract blessing. It's concrete. Like I want assets and I want also stability. Because like without price gouging, like then it's hard for me. Like if the market's moving constantly, then it's going to be very difficult for me to, stay balanced and balance then like the rest of the things we just discussed. Allow me to live my proper life and be in proper orientation, yada, yada, yada. So I would say like even that Rashi over there actually connects to what you were saying, which there's a focus where it's like, it's really on the ground. It's also focusing like on the markets.
Yeah. And we're not, it's not just like it's not just about me and my personal economic benefit. It is, but once you make it as about a market orientation, and it's like, I want, it's about societal, I would like to protect society, and this blessing is for everybody, not just me, but it's for society and to your point about moving out from the individual perspective to a more group perspective. Now it's my local market. I want to make sure that like people can afford things, and we have this blessing kind of in our community.
Specifically, I would say specifically when we know from our own scripture, right? We know that abundance is actually dangerous. Like when we say letova, why do we say letova? Wouldn't it be obvious that like it's for the good?
Yeah.
And the reason we're saying it's for good because we have in what's Kohelet again? Ecclesiastes. In Ecclesiastes, we have Osher Shomer leba'alav v'lera'ato, right? Which is like wealth is kept for like someone. It's kept, but it's also it gives them pain. And the famous idea of kochi v'otzim yadi asali t'chayil, right? Which is like the strength of my own hand allowed me to do that. And God says you're going to forget about God and you're going to think that you did this all yourself. And I like talking about our universal name, Yeshurun, right? But there's Veishman, Yeshurun, Veivat, right? Yeshurun got fat and he kicked. So the danger is not poverty. It's there's a self-sufficiency without being connected to God, right? When those things are detached. So we're not just asking for success. We're asking success to be aligned with goodness. And this goes back to the price gouging. Like I want to be in a market which is doing well. One could argue over here, well, you should be a libertarian, you should be capitalist. It doesn't matter. I'm into the market that does the most moral good. Now you could argue, it's the one that raises all ships, right? But I don't know. I'm not getting into an economical discussion right now. I am saying though that we are looking for one that displays morals. So it would have to have.
May I?
Yes, please, Kurt.
If I may push back a little bit on this. I believe if there's economic reasons to believe that a specific economic system will lift the most amount of people out of poverty, you have a moral responsibility to support that economic system. And we know because of historical evidence that capitalism lifts more people out of poverty than socialism by far.
That doesn't mean that they're the only two options, though.
Right.
There are many, many other economic options.
And you're not pushing back. I'm just saying,
It's not
I don't
pushback.
know which one it is.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we want the one that
But,
does
but I do, is what I'm saying.
Oh, I got
I'll say another reference that's kind of glossed here is at the end of this blessing. So like the good years in English, kashanim hatovot. So the good years only appears once in the Bible, right? So we actually know exactly what this is a reference to, which is Genesis 41:35, the 7 good years before the 7 bad years in Egypt with the famine. And this is a really interesting kind of like reference, right? Because we want to be blessed with our years as if they're the years before the famine in Egypt, which does not mean that famine isn't coming, right? Like there's a real complexity to that blessing of like, I want years like that where we're smart and able to like use our wealth to like prepare for bad times. But it's not saying that bad times will never come again. It's not saying, it's like we want years like that, where we're actually like preparing for the future and able to materially like, do the Joseph thing. We can talk about later. Joseph does some things that might be sort of questionable on how he reorganizes the economy in the bad years, but in the good years, there's no real critique of what he does, like to save Egypt and the entire region. And that's really what we're asking for in some sense, right? Is this kind of, I don't know, economic acumen almost, right? Like the ability to kind of navigate these markets and deal with this and like prepare properly.
right, but balance, right? Like even
balance, yeah.
Even King Solomon says that, right? Osher al titenli, right? Lechem hatrifeni lechem chukai, right? Give me the bread that is, what's
my daily portion.
Yeah,
right. Like the Christians. This is where the Christians get their daily portion.
Okay. But my daily portion bread, exactly. That's what we're looking for. That's what King Solomon is looking for. The Ramchal also does these, like the life is the balance between poverty and wealth as well. He focuses a lot as well, and like Yosef was saying, it's very much about the balance. I would even bring up over here Rav Nachman from Breslev. Right, he has like a reframing for this anxiety. He talks about how don't like a person in poverty, like he's having this obsession of like he's gonna die anyways. You're anyways gonna die. Like you ultimately, like we all die at the end of the day. And he's saying to like, he's not trying to trivialize life, but he's trying to recalibrate our priorities ultimately. Right? Like fear shouldn't dominate our existence. Like Parnassa matters, but it's within the proper proportion.
So one thing that you said, Yosef, like what you said in terms of, and you took it to another place. I was thinking about having a sense of time, or of where you are right now and what you're asking for. It's not that you're asking for bounty with no sense of context or time or how it relates to you. It is actually connected to time, which is a good, which reminded me also of some familiarity with Tanit in the Talmud, which talks about this whole thing about making sure that you say the right blessing in the summer versus in the rainy days. And if you ask for rain during the summer, it's so non-trivial that you have to go back and say the blessing again, because again you need to be oriented towards what's important right now for you and for the people around you. So you need to ask for the right thing. You can't just ask for rain whenever, because that might be disruptive, like a lottery.
Right. And it could destroy your crop, right? It's more than just disruptive. Like you will, if you have, I mean, we have a man with a vineyard here, right? So if you have the rains or the rain are due at the wrong time, if you have rains are due at the wrong time of year, you can destroy your crop, right?
Right.
So yeah, this is really about being very mindful of like where you are in the calendar cycle, where you are in the world. Like this is geographic. That was kind of interesting. There's a debate about this, because people who live outside of Israel, like what the rain or dew that they need are not necessarily giving on the same schedule that Israel is. And this was a very big debate over like, should we change this or not? Should we match the calendar? And ultimately, like we partially modify it, but it's only really partially modified for the northern hemisphere, and really only for Eurasia. So like the people in the southern hemisphere are still saying this, and they're saying it the wrong time of year because they're really, and then the meaning of the blessing changes, right? Because once you do that, then it's really about whether this bounty and these markets and this like is happening in Israel. It's not necessarily about my local world where this matters.
Well, I would say we know that Ein hanevua shara el chacham gibor ve'ashir, right? The prophecy is only rests on someone that who is wise, strong, or and wealthy. And we spoke about this in Pirkei Avot also, believe Ben, but right, the prophecy has to come ultimately for someone that's stable. There's like an inner independence to this person as well. And if a person is lacking materially, I'm saying even if he's not living in Israel, you could argue that you won't get prophecy if you're not living in Israel, but like, see Ezekiel. But the point being is that you don't want to be, if you're worried about those kind of things in your life, ultimately, again, if you're not balanced, it doesn't mean you have to be Elon Musk. It just means that you're not worrying or counting your dollars, because then your mind can't be open, obviously, to prophecy and the classic idea of Ezu Ashir Hasameach Bechelko, right? Who is wealthy, someone that's happy.
Is a subjective matter.
Right. I mean, yeah, but I'm saying, so the abundance you're asking for is the one that's relevant also for you, right? If I don't need a lot, then I don't need a lot.
Now, right. Which is the point that you.
That's not true about the rain.
It's not true about the rain.
I mean, for all the crops, you're also asking again. There's like a general blessing over you're asking for as well. But we see also here, but ten tel mataru bracha v'savenu metuva, right? So there's it's a layered language, right? You have rain, which is like physical sustenance, and then you have like this satisfaction, right, which is like more of an emotional, and like there's an existential fulfillment over there as well, right? It's not just, we want a sense of enoughness, basically inside the world, enough for everyone, and then obviously within that you have your own elements of this. But I do want to also, sorry.
So I'm going to add,
please.
I like this phrase in here. Pnei Hadamah is important, right, on the face of the earth. So I think it's a dual reference, I'm pretty sure. So it's both to Genesis 2:6, where it's and mist or dew had not yet arisen to water the ground. That was before man. In the Midrash, like that only happens because man prays. Only when man, like the first real rains in a meaningful sense happen when man prays for rain. So like I think that's they're playing with that midrash here about man praying for rain and causing the first rain to happen on the earth. And also is probably referencing 1 Kings 18:1, where that's when the Eliyahu's 3-year drought ends. And it says, and he gave matar al pnei hadama, and he gave, literally it's this phrase, right? He gave rains upon the face of the earth. So I think it's a dual reference, both like that, like praying for rain is important, and like praying for rain is not just like, it's hard to think about because like rain just happens, like in some sense, like in a material world where there's like it rains here and it rains there, and we don't know where it's going to rain, and like we don't control the rain with our prayers, like, and at the same time there is this prayer that's like sitting there where like rain and humanity are super intertwined, and like, I mean, we can, whether we're talking about this or like rain dances, from Native Americans, like, or the person someone was talking about Black Elk in Luke's stream, where the guy is talking to the rain clouds, like literally, like now today people talking to the rain clouds, right? And like this, there's something, it's a little shamanistic, it's a little bit like weird, it's certainly a liturgy of the wild in some sense, but like, yeah, like we like needing rain is like a very real need, and especially like I live in the East Coast, we don't get droughts that affect us in the same way that like they do in Israel or California, but they're right, like drought is a real issue like in a lot of the world, and like in serious ways, and like you pray for rain, whether you think it's not necessarily you can control the rain, and it's not about God like listening to your prayer and being like a vending machine. That's not what's happening here. But like,
ironically and sadly, Israel is like depending less and less on rain, right? Because of
which is a whole other question of whether that's a good thing. I mean, because that's theologically, that seems like a real problem. They should be very dependent on rain. And that's part of the theology of the Bible.
That's a global thing, though, as well.
Yes, that is true. That's true. Anyway, I I like pointing out the Tanakh connections in this text. That's my things. I can't let them go.
I would, first of all, they're amazing, and thank you for that. I would also mention over here that again, like Yosef said, this is like there's a universal element to this. Is also the blessing has a universal element to it as well, right? Like the tractate Ta'anit says that the day of rain is greater than the day of the giving of the Torah, because the giving of the Torah was just to Israel, and rain is for all the world ultimately. And there's a sense going back to Yosef, not you, Yosef. Well, going back to Yosef, who mentioned Joseph. We talk over there about, again, Mashbir l'chol haaretz, right? He sustains everyone, and this is very much the universal garb of Judaism is really sustaining the whole world, even a people that reject, right? The name of the book V'ani Tfilah comes from the pasuk Tachat ahavti yastanuni V'ani Tfilah, right? That like in return for the love that I project, they hate me. Nevertheless, I'm still prayer, right? So like Israel is still praying for the world. The world is not always responding with love, right? So when I'm praying for rain, because I'm understanding that I'm in this prayer mode, it's also for Iran, and it's also like, just to make this real for a second, it is horrible. It's horrible when it's raining over here. I'm always thinking about, like, unfortunately, the camps right now in or the 10 cities in Gaza right now, obviously dealing with rain, is horrible, right? So like there's a sense over there when you're asking for rain, there's a sense where you also feel like, I really don't want people getting affected badly from this and getting hurt. There's a different issue with Israel's infrastructure, which for some reason, like, we can handle making space lasers, but like too much rain in Tel Aviv, like,
Right, there's serious floods, and both in Tel Aviv and in Gaza. I mean, we saw them at the beginning of the spring, right? Like a couple months ago, where there was like really bad flooding, and it was crazy. I mean, it was crazy how poor the drainage is in both the places. Like,
yes.
It doesn't matter how developed Tel Aviv is; it still has awful drainage. And Bnei Brak, I think, that had like also some really bad floods, and it was just like, seriously.
But by the way, to that note, and it relates also to the abundance of the world. Again, we need this. The sustenance, this material world is needed it enables the Torah. There's this famous discussion in Tractate Avodah Zarah that the Romans are coming and saying that we want a place in the world to come. And we built markets and we built roads and we did all these things. We're allowed for Torah to flourish. And people are cynical about that. And they're like, well, you did the markets for gambling and you did the streets where prostitutes wait. Nevertheless, right? So even though the angel tells the Khazar king, right, your intentions are well, here it's the intention is wrong, but the structure is right. Sorry, the intention here is wrong, but the structure is right. Mm-hmm. So again, the Torah requires infrastructure and an economy and stability. So it's like a must, even if it's being used for gambling as well.
Yeah, I'll say that Rabbi Nachman has an interesting read on this, a different part. He mentions this prayer a couple of times. In one of his places, he says, "Why is it after the last one?" He said, "We just prayed for being healthy. You can't be healthy without having food. Like, so you need. So actually, he sees this blessing as tied to the previous one, specifically on individual health, which is like a totally different way to read this, but like tied to what you were just saying to some degree, where for Torah needs markets, well, humans to be healthy need like nutrients, and like these for him are like. I mean, it's also like important to note that he's coming out of the Baal Shem Tov tradition, which is very pharmacological, right? So like there are people who are very interested in the connection between health and what you eat. So like it's not maybe as surprising that that's what his focus is on this prayer, but it's a very different way. But then he's going to say like we want these things not just I don't have to. It's not just what I need for my local place for how much rain we need here versus over there, and like all of that individual like personalization, but also individually, like what health I need, like what foods I need individually versus someone else, and like that those things are good and that they satiate me properly. So he takes it to a very personal level, right?
Well, that could be part of the problem with the price gouging, is that then the poor are less healthy.
That the poor
I don't know if that fits in with what we're saying. I know I'm going back, but also, and one of the things you want for a bounty is so the price of food is low. right? It's when things don't go well that price gouging happens. I don't know how that fits in with the thing you were saying before. I just thought
it fits in with it fits in with the whole structure. Like when Judaism also has in it the idea of pe'ah, right? Which is like you're leaving the corners of the field unkept, because the idea is you're aware that even in the market, even in the system you have, right? You always have to be. I mean, the focus of in the Tanakh of the ger yatom ve'almana, right? The foreigner or the convert, well, the foreigner and the widow and the poor, and the widower and the orphan. But the idea is that, of course, is the focus. And there's nothing mentioned, like I'm saying, the focus, the stress in the Bible is on the land, like the land of Israel, and then the focus is on those three individuals. So, like, obviously, those things are happening in connection. The whole idea of also the Jubilee year or the sabbatical year, right, where like you're giving up all these debts that are owed to you. It's because there's a true understanding that it could be that getting to this utopian version where, like, you know, there's a UBI and there's no one poor is very difficult. Even the poor people have to give charity. And that's why there's a sense where we realize that the systems that are built, we infuse them with godly morals because we know that we have to cover for those things as well. So the price gouging, again, it makes sense. And this also connects, also the blessing ends with ki el tovu metivata, right? How is it written over here? Can you scroll down? No, lower down. Lower. No,
that's why we have. I don't think we have this here. Maybe don't have it in Ashkenaz.
Which version is that, Yosef?
Ashkenaz.
Sorry, which one? I can't quite.
Ki el tovu metivata. Is that in the
No, we don't have that. Okay. That sounds like I don't Mizrach, but
the idea is that all of this is based on the idea that we trust that God is this, you know, he's good, that this is what he wants, obviously, for us. Now, I would mention over here, as you know, we're moving on, which is like, why is this blessing though coming? We were talking about the order. Why is this blessing coming before redemption though? Right? As we speak about, like, in the next prayer, and again connected to the land, which is Chazal say, "En l'chaketz megulem hazeh," right? That there's no clearer sign of the end of exile or the beginning of redemption is the agricultural flowering of the land as well. So, like, this is also to show visible redemption as well. And to that, Yosef, the question is it coming from rain or is it coming from, let's say, you know, irrigation systems? The idea is that you're managing to create, you know, which it's a miracle in its own right. But you know, we see wealth and redemption also. I'm sure I'm gonna drive people crazy in the chat, but like whether it's Montefiore or Rothschild or Hirsch, right? We see this is like, you know, returning to the land is architectural revival as well. These things have to happen through a material restoration at the end of the day, and it needs to start also. I'm going to mention it because the focus over here is, again, we said material. It has to start with the physical because redemption includes everything ultimately, and it has to begin from, in a certain sense, the lower layer, right? Because in exile you just have spirituality. We can't express any of this. I just have my prayers. I just have my rituals that I'm dealing with. I don't have a place where I can actually elevate nature and sanctify it. And redemption is really the unity of the physical and the spiritual together ultimately. And I would say that it's, again, when material strength grows, then my spiritual capacity also expands. And that is ultimately what we're looking for. We're not looking for money. We're looking to build a world to create stability, which ultimately enables the Torah. Please, Yosef, go ahead.
No, that was good.
Yeah, I will say another thing with regards to this idea of spiritual versus material is that this is one of the differences between Judaism and, we'll say, the Amish or the Quakers, as far as I can tell, which is Judaism is not a passive religion, right? There is an idea that I mean, not to say that the Amish and Quakers don't act for God, but to my understanding, they're a very passive religion, right?
Again,
So it's like you have certain sects of Christianity, like to my understanding, the Amish and the Quakers, who say that we need to be totally disconnected from the world. But Judaism is not like that.
I don't know. Do the Amish not bless the world as well in their own prayers?
I suppose they do, but to my understanding, they don't generally have secular jobs, or I could be mistaken, but I'm just saying this is a distinction between Judaism and some people.
Mm-hmm. Thinking about it. Ben, Yosef, Stephen, thoughts?
Well, I'm in a farming town, a fruit farming town, and I can tell you that when things are bountiful, the mood is much better than when it's not. I mean,
Yeah.
just the general mood, the sharing. Although when you were saying before about the corners of the field, I see that all the time. All the farmers around here give free fruit to the less well off. It's
Amazing.
just a routine. It's just as a matter of course.
I wonder, Steven, do you see? Because what I wasn't wanted to say is, for me, a paradox keeps coming up here. You see, even though you say the mood is so great, you see, are there any, not to point out the negative, but there aren't any negative consequences when there's a lot of bounty, but then you face other issues. Because to me, this is the paradox of this is as well, what we see it of like, and this is the paradox of the story of Choni as well in the Talmud. It asks for rain, and he asks for rain. I think at first it's just a little bit, and then he asks again, and it's too much. And then he says, no, just I need just the right amount, and then it goes down the right amount.
To be fair, Ben, Choni is the great grandson of, I'm forgetting his name right now, but he was like a legit rain dance man, and he was he was in proper balance. Choni is really very weak with the force in that sense, and that's also part of the problem, right? He's also not calibrated properly to even ask for the rain.
Right. But what I'm saying is that the bounty, there's a paradox here where bounty can sometimes be disruptive. Just like in the summer, we don't want to ask for rain because it might deplete the crops. There's something about like, don't just give me all the time everything, which to me connects to the idea of rain being related to mercy, right? Because if you give too much mercy or chesed or whatever it might be, it's not good for the receiver because then they can't sustain themselves because they just rely on you. So sorry.
Mhm.
I
And
was
that's-
using bounty in the context of the actual crop output,
Yeah.
And the only negative there would be if your barn isn't big enough, I suppose.
Well,
But if your barn isn't big enough, then there's a lot of free fruit. Now, does it get distributed? Well, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, this would be very interesting if you were to talk to farmers about this particular prayer. They would have very, very intricate, complex prayers that would predict for months what they needed. It would not be a what do I need tonight. It would not be that at all. It would be what do I need next month? What do I need in September? What do I need in November? It would go. I don't know how long it would go on. It would go on a long time.
Well, that's what's one of the interesting things about this prayer is that I think it has that tension, because even though it seems like it's about this season and right now, the literal name of this prayer and like the main element of time in it is not tomorrow, it's not this week, it's a year, right? It's thinking about it's Shana. This is the blessing of the years, and it does come back to this. We want things to bless us this year like these previous. So it is thinking, I think, on a much longer scale, while at the same time trying to balance this like what we need right now for that year as a whole to work, right? Like I need this now, so my September does look like this, and my January does look like this, and my March looks like that.
Also, because of the uncertainty, right? Like the cycles and the seasons are certain, but because of the output, the uncertainty also really builds like humility and also dependence on God in a certain sense, right? Which also you're saying that they're thinking long term, and that's why I'm going to need this, and I'm going to need this, and I'm going to need that. That also relates to the order of the blessing itself. I'm going to have my mind open. I'm going to have to forgive. I'm going to have to be in that proper orientation to be that individual that then takes those things seriously.
Yeah. You have to have great flexibility.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because it's like this is a prayer for this year, right? It's so it's this agricultural cycle this year. This is my prayer. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting how that plays out. I also do know that for you can tell me, but farmers I think more than at the 1 year level because they also depending what they're doing, but they might need some of their seed for next year, and like this year affects next year and affects the
It's
year
more
after.
than that. It's my daughter is 10 and I want her to go to a good school.
That's
So
not
now
necessarily part of
you need a you need a 7-year plan
yeah.
to have enough harvest to get her to good school so she can learn a thing that she can get back to the community and can elevate the community. It's like this is just endless.
All right.
It's great.
Thank you all. Next week we continue with blessing 10. We are past the middle point. And very exciting. I'm actually thinking about it. Next Wednesday is correct. Seder night.
No.
Yes. No. Wednesday night.
Wednesday night. Yeah, I'm in redemption garbs. Hopefully, Messiah will come, and we could all continue this beautiful class in Jerusalem. However, if that does not happen, we will continue the following week.
No, isn't it Chag also?
It also Chag. Yes, it's also Chag. Correct. We will continue in 2 weeks from now. So those of you who don't get your praying fix, I recommend you look at older classes and just meditate on the ones we reviewed.
Yeah.
I'm wondering now. First of all, everyone's welcome to boogie if they want. I'm just going to look at some of this.
I've been managing your chat.
I'm looking at some of the insanity that's going on over here.
Okay, yes, Chag Kasher v'Sameach.
Catch up. You were still in conspiracy a century ago. Oh, this is not Yosef. This is you, not Jacob.
Yeah, sorry. Jacob's
not all good. I'm like Jacob is being like
actually manage your chat a little bit.
I'm like Jacob.
Yeah.
I tried not to.
Do we have
rise too much?
Do we have a troll in chat? I think this person is
a troll.
It's okay. It's okay.
Questions. I'm just asking questions. That's all I'm doing.
It was. Yeah. I don't. Pep in my step is welcome to stay in the chat.
Right. So the Khazar thing, I see. Correct, sir. Yalla, get with the program, bro. Yes, I mentioned it as part of. It was relevant to the class. Correct. I see Yosef. You talk about that. Who were going to play him? The Jews. That was actually very funny, Yosef. You made me lull. Israel is a colonial nation. States. I wonder again, like when someone like this, like when Pimpin' Mystery is listening to this chat.
Sorry, pep in my step.
Yeah, I think this person. I think this person is not.
I'm like half looking at this. Pep in my step.
Pimp in mystery sounds pretty funny. That's not what they were going for. So let's not. We don't need to go there.
Pep in my step. Again, like you hear. Maybe it's very naive of me, but you hear like a conversation like this over an hour. Are you not hearing like love and understanding and patience and thinking and like it's so weird to me like how and I always go back to you Joseph about like our impact in the TLC, which is like I want to believe that like can't you see there's like normal dudes and like shouldn't that be enough to let you know that like it's not the bloodthirsty people that you're like, writing about? Like, does he think like, oh, Yosef and Chazi, you're just like silly kids thinking the Khazar is like, why?
Well, I think this person, there's a 5% chance this is Claire Cause alt in disguise.
We're not in that stream right now. We're doing something totally different. This is the prayer.
Maybe because of that, maybe it is Claire. It's fine.
Did I miss? Yeah. Well, Darwinism. that's not usually Claire's go-to thing, but
Yeah, okay, so maybe not clear, but
Also,
still.
Darwinism, Rabbi
that's
Cook,
that's something that bothers like Anselman and like those guys a lot.
Yeah, but
That's,
either way, whoever this person is, they're clearly not here in good faith.
that's
Do we have
fine.
some time to schmooze in general?
I mean, I'm homesick, so yeah.
I have
I mean,
I could
I'm
I could
happy to
choose a
chat.
little, and Joseph,
Yeah.
you could lock it up when it's done.
So,
Maybe not too long. We've
have
been on
you, Yosef, have you ever heard of loop quantum gravity out of curiosity?
No, I saw you posting stuff about it. I'm not a physicist. You asked me all these physics questions. Like I studied as a hobby physics when I was. But Steven did physics. He's here. He's a biochem.
Oh.
Yeah, a little bit.
Sorry, he's a. I mean, he does a physical bio stuff. But
Physical chemistry.
thank you, physical chemistry. I did physics as a hobby. I was super into it in high school. I did it in college because I did engineering, so I took my physics classes. I started quantum, and I was like, I'm not. I could do this, but it's so hard, and I have
So,
so many other things I want to spend my time on. And I stopped. I stopped
You don't
in
want
my
to,
first
you don't want to
semester of
dilute the
quantum.
field, Joseph. That's so honorable of you. You're like, guys, I'm not gonna.
yeah.
No,
Well,
I'm.
the reason I asked is just because you seem like a generally knowledgeable person, but the question basically about loop quantum gravity is that basically, as I understand it, what it says is that space-time is emergent from the entanglement of quantum loops and at Planck length, and basically it explains Einstein's general relativity theory of gravity of the curvature of space-time leaving the gravity through the entanglement of these loops, creating a certain geometric structure.
Which
Cool, Kirk.
okay, which
Cool,
which
Kirk.
sounds.
This
It's got a
isn't the
fatal
schmooze,
flaw,
though,
though,
right?
Sorry, go ahead, Stephen.
because the quantum loops are at the Planck length, and as we all know from Einstein, as you go faster in time, things shrink in size, and how can you shrink the Planck length? So loop quantum gravity has this problem in that the way that it divides space-time up leads to this problem of it's variable in its size depending on the velocity. So I don't know how you solve that.
I think you could just say Einstein may have been wrong about some things, like
Yeah, but then why are you using him
Yeah,
as a
but
standard?
well, because
dilation of
it's
time
specifically
with
the part about
velocity is-
general. It's the thing that Einstein got right is the part that gravity is a result of space-time curvature,
Mm-hmm.
but he could have been wrong about other points, right?
True. I mean, he was wrong about quantum for other parts of quantum. We know that, but
Yeah.
But the dilation of time with velocity,
Yeah, the dilation of
no
time
one,
is
no
not-
one
yeah.
questions that.
no.
There are some physicists who accept absolute simultaneity. I mean, they're a minority.
Yeah, but time dilation we have experimental data for, right, from like GPS and stuff now. So like that's not a. I might be willing to go back to pepping my step for a second here. To your question, Chazi, about good faith. Sorry, Kirk.
Right. Well, I want to.
Sorry. No. Go up to the one before. The one before that. Yeah. So I can understand that you can be listening to the stream, and you could say like, some people on the stream are Zionists, some may or may not be, whatever. But Chazi certainly has claimed that title. I am a very I don't know. We'll talk about what I am later, but you could say like that there. You could see it as a form of hypocrisy. Like here we're talking about repentance, and here we're talking about healing, and here we're talking about bounty, and like it doesn't seem to be reflected in the actions of the current state of Israel, or maybe historical. I think this be mostly current, but maybe historical. And there's like a disconnect there, and that is like a weird and a hard disconnect because like, are we really talking about what we are talking about? Or, are we really practicing what we preach? Maybe that's the way to say it.
Yeah, but there's two assumptions being made over here. One, which colonizing is happening, and two, that war crimes are happening.
I hear that, and we can debate all day about the definition of war crimes or genocide, which you didn't bring, or she. I don't know if it's a boy or girl.
We can't debate all day. That's my point. Is like the assumption is that Yosef and Chazi, right? Like either he thinks, if we both think that there. I'm not talking about individual war crimes. Like Israel's doing mass, the genocide, all the good claims out there, and we're colonizing. And you and I both don't think that. then I'm asking Pep and myself to think, do you think that Yosef and Chezi are either brainwashed, right? It's propaganda. They can't break out of they have no problem talking about the quantum and blessings and universalism, but when it comes to this, like they can't. They just see.
So I said. I mean, I said like we have talked about this on this channel before. Like it's not like you haven't debated Zionism with Jacob how many times on this channel, right? Like there's plenty to critique of it. And even you have critiques about certain forms of Zionism, right? Like
Sure.
that right? It's not that you being a Zionist suddenly means you agree with every single thing done by the state of Israel, or done by the current government of Israel, or done historically in the state of Israel, done by any other person who claims to be a Zionist, right? Like
Sure.
we've made those distinctions before. And this is why I said like this isn't really the audience. In the comment, because like I get that you can see it's about, and yeah, I saw Jerusalem Post had something about Israel with southern Lebanon. Yes, and
even there it's nuanced.
Even there it's nuanced. Yeah, I don't believe the modern national borders are sacrosanct. One. But I also don't think that we should just be conquering and taking other people's territories and like,
Sure.
and much less making more refugees, harming them. Certainly not genocide, right? Like, but I don't have an essentialist position on taking territory for defensive reasons. Like Lebanon did that. Lebanon itself has done that before. Tyre did that before. You know, when I talk about kingdoms, and like everyone has like. War is a complicated thing that has lots of nuances, and we can talk about like what just war theory is. The practice of foreign power, that is a definition of colonialism, except that usually colonialism actually, right, exploitation of resources and people is part of it. I don't think Israel is taking southern Lebanon to exploit the resources there.
And they also say that
when they announce what they announced, and I don't actually think it's a great idea. I don't think they should do this. I'm not an approver of this policy, but I also, given what they announced, and it depends if you trust them and believe them, it's for a defensive buffer, right? It's because
how can you trust them? They've lied about.
I know. Well, how do you trust them? How do you have
Iran?
And it's really hard to have good faith in these, or to trust that the other person has good faith in these discussions. I get that. I totally get that. And you know what? It's actually even worse, because there are definitely elements within the Israeli public, including some ministers of the government, who will say that they actually do want that land to be settled by Jews, and they do want it as expansion. And I do disagree with them, and I don't think we should be doing that. I think the majority don't want that. But be careful there, because 3 years ago to say the majority of Israel doesn't want to settle people in Gaza. And then the Overton window did shift a bit on that, where with enough pressure and enough kind of media campaigning and a bunch of other stuff that the people who wanted to settle Gaza did, in part kind of as a comeback after what happened in 2005, 2006 with taking all the Israelis out of Gaza. Like they want Jews back in Gaza. And,
they want Jews back in Gaza because of who the Gazans are.
But the Overton window did shift on this, and it's quite possible it could shift
because reality shifted.
And that does worry me. I mean, I hear you about the reality shifted. I hear you about that things.
But
the Overton window shifting on these things does worry me.
But 1 second, the Overton window is just being adjusted because if you find out, as many Israelis did, that 80% of Gazans supported, right, what Hamas was doing, then your Overton window, okay, you got to do some renovations, because otherwise you're not looking at reality properly, right?
So in the comments here, sorry, 1 second. Just war theory does not assume that the person you're fighting wants to be fought. That's actually against just war theory, and you don't need to fight. You can. There's things other ways. That is not just war theory. The concept of greater Israel is a colonial aspiration of expansionism. That is a very complicated. Chezi could talk about all day about the.
No, don't even be there. Call it Pax Judaica. That's what's happening, right? I'm saying that's what it is. It's hard for me because even Yon God, who plays around with this idea, who jokes around with this, it's nothing. It's just very challenging for me. I can't, as someone who sees, and you looked at Pax Judaica and I looked at Pax Judaica. Nevertheless, this is people are hungry for, right? Like Tucker Carlson, they're loving this dude.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why
this
a
is-
pep in my step. There's nothing you could say. Literally, there's nothing we could say at this point, and that's what's hard for me.
Well, this
I don't
is- this
know
is the
that there's
thing about-
nothing. I don't know that there's nothing we could say.
Ask him.
I
Ask him
haven't
what
given
would
up.
he need to see, and what does he think is fair, right?
It doesn't
What is
matter. Part of it's not. It doesn't matter what we say. Part of it is, and this was a point that I really took to heart. I was talking to a Jewish, very pro-Palestinian like activist, who's been worked with people who I like, whatever, who I have very strong opinions about. Maybe one should not be working with. And they were like, here's the problem. And so someone who like understands the Jewish perspective, like the pro-Israel Jewish perspective to some degree, because they came out of Judaism, but like, I don't have necessarily a problem with most of the words that Zionism says and publishes, and like historical Zionism for the most part, really, I don't have a problem with. But the problem is the actions, and the actions of what the state has done, is what I'm judging. And there's this disconnect between the actions of the state and what Zionists say they want to do and what their aspirations and ideals are. And when Jews defend Zionism, they often are very focused. We can talk about whether it's a good critique or not on that level. But this part is what hit me, was when Jews talk about Zionism and they defend the ideals of Zionism and its aspirations and like the propositional of what Zionism wants to be and do. And when it gets critiqued, the critique is what it has done, or what people who say they believe in it have done. And there's like there's weird like break between those 2 points. And that's a fair point, I think, to some degree, is that we generally do focus. We generally do focus on what Zionism says as opposed to what Zionists do.
What does Zionists do?
So
again, compared to the other actors.
I don't know about we should talk about compared to the other actors. I get, because we should not be.
Well, so
because the standard should not be what the other nations do. This is, give us a king, so we want to be like the other nations. That should not be our standard.
So that's why this relates to the feature of anti-Semitism, right? Either you're Judas or you're Jesus. There's nothing in the middle. Either be amazing or disappear. And is that the standard that, like, is that what Pep in My Step is saying? Is like, basically, you just need to figure out to be amazing and fight the most just war and prove everything and have no death and have nothing. And like, only then, like, basically.
Well, I assume Pep in My Step is actually against the Jewish state, as it's a colonialist, imperialist project, and would just want it to be dismantled. I don't know what.
Well, so
this is just on what the comments have been so far.
The thing about Pep in My Step being a bad faith actor is that Pep in the Step would not criticize Zionism the same way they would criticize any other state doing the exact same things or worse.
But that's look. We can get into whataboutism and relativism, and those are well established.
But you can't say international war crime without whataboutism, because that's not a statement that's happening in a vacuum.
I hear you. International war crime and just war theory and all those things are drawing from a presumption that Israel should be treated like all the other nations, which is actually a much fairer and better standard than the one I would hold Israel to, because my type of Zionism says that Israel actually does need to be. At a much higher standard.
I'm with you, and that is also what you hear in Israel, right? The critiques inside Israel are demanding that as well. Having said that, right, like I'm going to say something very controversial, obviously.
Oh, great! Now is the controversial part. Listen, guys.
But someone could come and ask, how do you explain the 20,000 dead children, right, in Gaza? An answer for that could also be that what do you call? That's called the lowest rate of combatants. That's what that's called.
But it could have been lower because they made certain decisions.
But 1 second, the could have been lower is obviously we all want to strive for that. But if the intention now,
because here's where I'm going to push back, and this is where you're going to differ on this. For this war, given certain climate and strategic reasons, they changed the thresholds for what was considered acceptable.
Collateral damage.
What's it called? What are the acceptable level of non-combatant casualties were changed, and we know that was reported in the Israeli press. I mean, this isn't like some international conspiracy theory. Like, it was important in the Israeli press that they changed the acceptable casualty rates. We could talk about what acceptable is, but like
maliciously.
So What it depends on what we mean by that. They
What
changed
do you
them.
think it means by that? Do you think Bibi Netanyahu and the government want to kill kids? And if the answer is no, that's the end of the discussion, because that's not what the country wants to do. And
I
even
think
if
they were.
erred,
I think they were more willing to take a higher civilian casualty risk because, and this gets into just war theory. Proportionality says you have to minimize the risks, but it has to be in proportion to, and your strikes has to be in proportion to what evil you're trying to stop, or what the harm you're trying to stop. It's not evil,
and,
the harm you're trying to stop.
assuming you're playing
after October 7th, the harm levels they realized could actually be a lot higher than they had been previously thinking they were. That the amount of harm that Hamas could do was actually higher after October 7th, when they were shown that they were underestimating Hamas. So they allowed the proportionality options to go higher, which meant they could accept more civilian casualties. Now that is not necessarily malicious in like I'm trying to kill more kids sense. And it's also not even malicious in a just war, super logical, propositional sense. But we can also understand that people who are not in the same strategic position and looking on from all over the world from different positions, either both military and civilian, people who know what's going on, people who don't know what's going on, we can understand when changing those casualty rates, we can understand the perception that gives without the context, right?
I'm saying like the second you want to talk about it though and make any claims, what do you do then? Where are you?
I hear you because you don't. You need to find, and part of your problem, I think, right here with my argument is we either use the international standard, or the standard is perfection, because we don't have like a standard in between. Like, so we don't have anything to compare Israel against that's in between those two. Like the people who want Israel to be better and always be better, like should they be? And this is the same problem we have with the AI actually.
But he doesn't want this, right?
Okay,
I don't agree with it. It's not Israel be better. It's disappear basically because
no. He says he doesn't agree with the way it's done, but he doesn't argue against their existence. Israelis have a right to life and nationhood, same as Palestinians, Iranians, and Lebanese. I think this is not as an extreme of a position that you're arguing against.
You're right. I take that back. You're right.
And yeah, and there's universal.
Like this kind of comment.
Wait, Jan God's here though.
Jan God is here. He thinks we could be in exile.
We should choose wandering exile, or maybe actually the way he phrased that, I'm not sure what he's saying.
But this kind of comment, Israel signed a UN declaration.
Yes.
Like I can't take that seriously when Iran is on top of the women's right organization in the like it's just not serious.
No, I can. Israel has signed on international treaties to limit what it does and has made agreements. Both Israel and the US right now are trying to get out of their international agreements for various reasons and causes, because they don't trust the international bodies, because they think ever since they signed those agreements, the international bodies have betrayed them in various ways. And there's a question of like, is your word your bond? There's a real question here. Is your word your bond?
But only if you're living in a reality, Yosef. Only if you're living in a reality, this relates to this. Like, did they sign it? Is your word your bond? Right. If I also said, don't try to kill me, is your word your bond? Don't come in, don't try to blow anything up, is your word your bond? Like, I'll tell you, with Egypt and Lebanon, it seems like we managed to make it work. And that's what we want. And that's what we keep on telling the world we want. So is the world, like, I think we've done more than enough also to show that, again, if people are bad actors, definitely Iran is a bad actor. Right. So like, even if you want to say that Israel's a bad actor, even more so Iran, like it just in any metric that you look at this is just and I don't fully blame. I even see it as messianic. Like I love the energy that like Pep and myself is bringing in, because we all want that, brother. We all want it to be perfect. That's why
you love the pep. It's literally you love the pep part of the step. It's
here you go. This is a perfect example. Golden pagers ring any bell, right? Here we go. So there's a mission that they do with pagers to limit the amount of damage. It's the most like
So the pager attack, right? I'd agree with you. The pager attack was incredibly good. It was actually much higher standard than a proportionate response, because it really was very focused and had very few civilian casualties. And it took out an entire leadership structure that was definitely not working in good faith, and clearly we're being aggressive. Iran is also
maybe I'm wrong, right? Because like he's saying, like, did you sign Israel assassinate Iranian leaders and aggression, which are international war crimes? Okay, like I guess if that's the standard, right? So like basically again, that what's being asked over here is only when you get murdered will you be allowed to complain.
So a terrorist attack, technically, Pep in my stuff, is supposed to be targeted at civilians, and the purpose of it is supposed to increase the terror among civilian populations. Attack against another military is not considered a terror attack, and this was an attack against the military. Now, we can talk about the colonialism thing with Lebanon. It's complicated too in so many ways because the Lebanese government is actually working with the Israeli government right now on this. So, like, if the Lebanese government has agreed to this, it's not colonialism. But of course, southern Lebanon is not under. It's under Hezbollah and not the actual proper government. So, like, do you recognize the legitimacy of Hezbollah as a government is a whole other question. And like, terrorist and you can say the IDF and the Israelis are basically a terrorist organization running a state,
Right,
and why not Hezbollah? There are people who
But
argue that all the time.
But if we are, who isn't? Who isn't?
Yep.
And if everyone is, then like what are we talking about?
Iran, Pep in my step, Iran launched rockets at Israel, remember? Like they violated their UN treaty just as much here. And they violated it much earlier. I mean, they had an attack that was not preempted in last Pesach, right? Or last Rosh Chodesh Nisan, so a year and 2 weeks ago.
But this,
right, they've violated, so like this is the question. Both Iran and Israel have agreed to international treaties. When Iran breaks those international treaties, does that allow Israel to break an international treaty that it's agreed to defend itself? Where, and this is where these are not covenants, and these are basically contracts, right? Contracts break when one party breaks them. The question is Israel still bound to it in other ways? And yes, I mean, Israel can't start having aggressive wars against the UK or Russia or Ukraine, right? It's attacking a state that's attacking it. And Iran would say the same thing. And Iran would say the same thing.
Years, right?
Yeah.
For 40 years, the conversation was never, we can't wait to take over Iran and have it be ours. It's leave us alone. Stop chanting that you want to murder us. That's always.
It's more than just stop chanting. Stop giving money to people to shoot missiles at us, right? It's a much more direct thing.
But Pep in my step is saying, listen, the UN, Iran is a UN member too, so attacking is aggression. Like it's if Hitler would have signed in also to the UN, it would be like, listen, at the end of the day, like he's a UN member, like there are bad actors, and that's why I'm unapologetic about the Jewish people, and I would hope. Also Christianity as well, have a message to say to the world. There is evil out there in the world, and that's it. And I don't have to play by the rules when an evil is dealing. And now you can be like, maybe you're the evil. Maybe they're the evil. Sure, everyone has their own metrics to look at this thing. And this is the big part we have right now with Islam as well. This whole discussion that we're having online as well, which is what are the operating systems that are beneficial, that are working well, that are oriented properly?
So could I give my 2 cents on this point about the evil actors? Because even as someone who's not very knowledgeable about Zionism, because basically the way I see it is people have a more Sorry, what was that, Hezi?
Yeah, it's not to you; it's to the world. Go on.
It's just so. I think, and Yosef might be able to speak to this because, to my understanding, Yosef is also knowledgeable about like ethics and ethical philosophy. I think people have a responsibility to resist totalitarian governments, right? So, basically, people in a situation where there's multiple types of guilt, and at a certain level of abstraction, there's the guilt you incur for being an active evil person, but there's a certain degree of guilt you incur for not resisting totalitarianism within your government. And I believe that to the extent that the Iranian people are complicit in their government's crimes against humanity, they are, in a sense, responsible for that. Would you say that's resonant with Jewish theology, Hezi or Yosef?
Sorry, you went way too fast for me.
Yeah, same.
So it's like, would you say that people have a more responsibility to resist evil that their government is engaging in?
People have more responsibility.
As Jews, there's things, obviously, there's 3 cardinal sins, right? That there's those things that, like, it doesn't matter what you're being asked to do. There's an element which is, I mean, this goes back to the 3 oaths as well, which is like, there's a reality when we're in exile we're at the mercy of the countries around us. So there's also, you don't want to get murdered, you don't want to go extinct, but clearly when we learn about things where there's no man, right, you have to stand up. And it's backwards, right? The UN is adorned with verses from our Bible, right? That's the standard they're taking. That's what they're decorating themselves around. And then people come like this here. First of all, it's weird understanding, but I'm guilty for reminding you of Zionist history. Yosef answered the history and told you, right?
Yes, we can talk about
one small group did get Jews out.
There were more than one. There was 3 different times when different groups.
I think there's actually
Zionists.
Also, there's Kessner.
I was saying there was 3 times. There was Kessner, there was the Havara, and there was another one. I think it had to do with the boycotting of Nazi businesses. So there was these 3 times. The boycott of Nazi businesses was in retaliation for the boycott of Jewish businesses that was happening under the Nazis, right? So there was this whole thing. So there was 3 times with the Zionists, as far as I know. Maybe there was 4, but there are 3 times at least that are really public, that are well known, where the Nazis and different Zionist organizations met, and for the most, 2 of the 3 were about getting Jews out of Germany, because remember, before the Nazis adopted the final solution, they were not trying to kill everyone, they were trying to just move Jews out of their lands, even though they really disliked them. They were trying to put them in Madagascar. They had all these plans.
Apparently we didn't belong in Europe, though, as the other.
We didn't belong in Europe, according to them. We were not Europeans. We should not have been there. And the Nazis thought, Jews could actually maybe go somewhere else, including the Middle East. And they tried, and this was super early, obviously, with the Nazi Party and for the Havara, and they did get a very, very small group of people out through this method. It was quickly showed the Nazis quickly showed that they were not great good faith actors in this interaction.
Yeah. So, but
and that they weren't, and then and ultimately that the Nazis weren't going to be a partner to the Zionists. Look, there were Orthodox rabbis who were pro-Zionist at the very beginning of the Zionist Party. There's this crazy statement they put out about how they're, how they support nationalism and how this is a good thing, and the workers' rights, because it was a form of socialism. It had some great retirement benefits and sick leave and labor practices. And there were Orthodox rabbis who actually thought that this wasn't going to be the end of the world for Jews in 1931 or 2, whatever that statement comes out. And then, it's very clear that things get a lot worse. And with the Nuremberg laws, and then Kristallnacht, right? There's just this progression, and then at some point, various Jewish groups, or all the Jews, even the ones who thought that maybe the Nazis could be not so bad, realized they were wrong, right? They do error correction, the Zionists have a Havara agreement, realized it's wrong, and even with Kessner and that deal, which was super late, that. When that becomes public, that a Zionist organization secretly was getting people out and using the system, it was a huge controversy in Israel. Books. I mean, this is when Perfidy came out, talking about Jacob loves that book. It's been mostly overturned with actual research now. Perfidy's not a great representation of what happened, but even so, it was a really big deal, and it was a hugely controversial thing. And Israelis turned against Kessner and that whole group, and repudiated them for trying to deal with the Nazis.
Does any cut? So I'm looking at this thing over here right now, right? Which is here. First of all, I was simply expressing my frustration with Israeli international crimes, right? Which also, I hate colonialism in all its forms. Now. And there is a specific thing over here, right? Signed 25 of August, 1933. Do you spend any time looking at into Iran, into Arafat, to get the same amount of detail? Number one. Number two, when you see, I hate colonialism in all its forms. This relates a little to the blessing I was saying right now. We live in a world, right? And this is my disagreement also with Jacob, which is when I say I'm a Zionist, I don't think we're there yet, right? I don't think the state of Israel is the end all be all. You are right that there's elements of how it was constructed that are problematic. I don't think we are going to ever move forward with our brothers and sisters, our Palestinian and Arab brothers and sisters, until we have a real deep discussion, which at least recognizing the trauma that they had to go through when we came over here. And that's very, very important for healing as well. and America had slavery. Like I'm just saying, like everyone has issues that they then work on. Now we are a young country that is super self-critical, constantly moving on these things as well. You see it on the streets. So it's are you tired? Are you like you should be if you're tired of Israeli war crimes, you should be or exhausted. You should be way more exhausted about the Uyghurs. You should be way more exhausted about all the other stuff. Like it's if what's happening in Israel is exhausting, it's a miracle that you're even awake because everything should have put you in a coma by now with how tiresome it is of the evil happening in the world. So it's
I mean, this is a much more complicated conversation. I think we can talk about colonialism for a second. There was a really cool panel. It was a really weird panel, actually, in some ways. I could tell you more about it maybe at another point. But it was about the concept of being indigenous, and there was a Palestinian on it, and there was an Israeli Jew on it, and there was a Native American on it, and there was an Aboriginal guy on it. And it was a fascinating panel. I think actually it might have been an Irish on it too. Just about the concepts and how the concepts of indigenous, especially it was an academic panel one, so like that itself is interesting because like the concept of indigeneity in academia and how it's kind of affected politics and evolved over the years is fascinating. But it was really interesting to see the differences and how they understood what indigenous meant and like how different frames and like things have shaped these meanings because like we know. No, maybe I don't know if anyone, but like way back when the Jewish Zionist paramilitaries were fighting the British mandate and like they were doing terrorist attacks against Britain, like they were terror attacks. Yeah, we can own that. They were working with and cross training with IRA militants, like the Irish Republican. Right. And they were super like loved each other and like exchanged strategies and tactics. And they were fighting the British together. And like they understood themselves as brothers. There's like a really great speech about this from one of the IRA leaders. Now Ireland has flipped on Israel and Zionism. And that's fascinating in many ways, because once Ireland kind of became independent, became its own state, and like the Republican Army sort of was successful, and now also especially post the Good Friday Accords, like Ireland's ethics and concepts of indigenous and what colonialism means to them has shifted in a fundamental way. But anyway, parts of this there were so many fascinating parts of this, but part of it was there was a little exchange between the Palestinian and the Jew on this panel, and the Jew was bringing up like DNA studies and saying like, look, we probably share about 40 to 50% of our DNA with but me and you, like you, the Palestinian, and me, the Jew, probably share the most DNA of any of the people on this panel, right? Like, and this is an Ashkenazi guy, but Ashkenazim do have 50 to 60%, maybe a little more of their DNA, depending on who is from that area. Palestinians are a little higher. They're around 70 to 75% because they have an Arabian component and they have a couple other mixtures. But like, we are really genetically brothers. A lot of the Palestinians who are not Jewish, whether they're Arab or Muslim, I'm so tired. I've been Muslim or Christian.
30% Palestinians or something like that are.
So there's a number of Palestinian families that actually trace themselves like purely to Jewish roots. That's actually a really well-known thing among Palestinian genetics, where there's like these 5 or 6 very large tribe, whatever you want to call them. There's a name for it. I'm going to say clans, but families that are definitely from Jewish roots. There's a number of others that are highly suspected to probably come from that, but like they share DNA. When we talk about colonialism in America, we're talking about a very different conversation, or even in Ireland or Australia, we're talking about a very different conversation. We're not talking about people coming back to the land, even if they're only 60 or 70 or whatever percent genetically from that land. We're not talking about people coming back to the land where they were originally sent away and exiled from. This is a very different conversation than colonialism in America, which I don't know where Pep is from. Actually, I'd be really curious. But like, it's just an entirely different frame. And one of the things that actually happened, one of the real problems with Edward Said's work on Orientalism, was he tried to create a framework for colonialism that specifically defines colonialism actually around Zionism as being the paradigm, and then everything else fits into that paradigm, which is like which was not happening. The rest of like colonial studies was in a very different place. Even like at the very far left, progressive Marxist kind of side of colonial studies was in a different place. And he has this thesis that like really upends that because he reframes it through Zionism, and that like that has changed this conversation in ways that's like really really hard to talk about. Because like, is it colonialism if you're going back to the place that you were from originally? If Mexican Americans now who never lived in Mexico and are being sent back by the Trump administration who've never lived in Mexico, right? Like, but it's like that, but like at a much bigger scale and over a much longer period of time, right? But it's
and
similar.
those American Mexicans would also have to have a 2,000-year longing to come back to Mexico.
Yeah. Right. Like, but they some of them do. I mean, I'm not saying like there are people who do feel a sense of diaspora. I know like Jews like think like we live in diaspora, capital D diaspora. There's a lot of nations who currently have senses of diaspora and have diaspora cultures and do want to get back to their land eventually, or like at least imagine it as some sort of romanticized ideal. And this happens. There's examples of Italians in South America who do this. There's examples of Palestinians in Mexico that do this, right? There's a huge Palestinian and Lebanese population in Mexico. And like, but like, yeah, Palestinian diaspora exists as much as the Jewish diaspora in a real way.
With the Palestinians, much more complicated.
Yeah.
And if I'm another thing that what I was trying to get at with this question about guilt is basically to what extent are people guilty if they don't resist the totalitarianism and human rights abuses of
you can only resist so much. I mean, right, at some point there was this concept that came out of Holocaust kind of ethics that said that all the bystanders are just as guilty as the perpetrators. And I think that's a very strong and probably not supportable statement to some degree. Like, we know a lot about human psychology now. I mean, this is Peterson's makes a big point about this. Like, what you would be a guard, if you grew up in Germany as a German non-Jew, whatever, you might be a guard at a concentration camp. Like, you don't know what you would have chosen in that moment. But even for people who weren't active participants, like the people who, thought some things were suspicious, but sort of just turned a blind eye or didn't want to see, or like, how much are they guilty of resisting or not resisting? Totalitarian regimes are insane, and like sometimes resisting. Right. I don't know. Is
Masada resistance?
Yeah. Is Masada resistance killing yourself? Maybe. Right. Like, is the guy who hangs on to his Eastern Orthodoxy or his Judaism under Soviet Russia, they're resisting, but they're not resisting in the way that you're probably thinking, Kirk, right? Like, they're not like fighting out in the streets with the government and like shouting it from the rooftops. They're resisting in a very quiet, like way, like spiritual way. They're doing spiritual.
Yeah. Well,
and like, how do you judge that? And also, how do you judge the Palestinian polls, right? Like, so Chazi says,
yeah, that's kind of where I was going to go. Was basically the point also applies to what extent are Palestinians guilty to the extent they don't resist Hamas. I believe it was Carl Jaspers who analyzed Nazi guilt with regards to the idea of complicity, right? And my understanding is Jaspers distinguished between the people who are guilty because they don't resist the government and the people who are actively engaged in immorality themselves. But either way, there's still some degree, perhaps a lesser degree, but some degree of metaphysical guilt held by people who don't resist evil, because basically they're saying that they're okay with their culture's ethics being degraded by totalitarianism.
But doesn't the definition of evil change from culture to culture? I mean, we're talking about an extremely complex idea here, as using these sort of broad brushes. I don't know that you can do that. Every conflict's going to be different. Every set of societies that are pitted against each other are going to have different ideas of what's evil and what can be done against evil, and what sort of passive resistance or active resistance, right? I mean, it seems like part of the problem we're having here is that we're talking about an extremely complex thing as though it weren't complex, and as though everybody would agree on the same definition, even of something like evil, right? Like, can we define evil? And we'll be here for I don't know how many years.
No.
Well, just as a Jew, right? That's ultimately that's my code. That's the operating system I'm looking at the world through. And while it can be adjusted and modernized in some certain sense, what I see what I see happened in October 7th is evil. Like that's what it looks like. I mean, we're getting towards we're almost at Passover. We sing the song Vehisha Amidah, right? What's the translation in English over here?
I'll just say that wasn't Kirk's definition, though. Kirk wasn't going on a definition of
Yeah,
that was so obvious. I'm saying that there's a wide gray area.
Well, but the point I was just trying to make was that in the case of analyzing Palestinian society, how many of them are willing to put in the effort to resist Hamas, who have the knowledge that what Hamas is doing is causing terrorism against innocent Israelis and innocent Palestinians?
So polling Palestinians is a very complicated thing. I actually have a friend who works in polling Palestinians and Jordanians, and it's a fascinating topic on how you get like statistical sample like this from like the statistics side, because that's what I do, right? On a professional level, like figuring out how to get good samples that are meaningful, that are not coerced, that people are actually telling you the truth and not afraid of telling you what they believe. There's a real art here. It's very complicated. When we say that it's 80%, the error bars on that 80% number, or earlier in the war, 60%, are very large. It's also really complicated because Gaza, for instance, we say Palestinians, but Gaza, for instance, is much more in favor of a two-state solution than the West Bank. And that like complicates this whole question, because when they say that they want a two-state solution, like, are they imagining that their state will be governed by Hamas or someone else, right? Like, and because a two-state solution, Hamas wouldn't be happy with a two-state solution as far as we can tell. So like that, it doesn't seem compatible. So how can it be 60% want a two-state and 80% support Hamas's attacks on Israel, right? Like, or 70% support the Hamas government, right? Those are not actually compatible polls. So it's really hard to kind of work out like what's going on there a little bit.
It's too much. That's the point. It's too much.
Yeah, but at the same time, the West Bank, you know, support for the two-state solution is twice as high in the West Bank as in Gaza. And even if we say the noise is kind of high on those, that's still a significant difference, like twice as high, right? We're talking about like 60% versus 30% support for two-state. And the fact that 70% of the West Bank wants a one-state solution is actually, not quite, but like 60% of the one, there's a couple of people who want something in neither one or two states. But the fact that the majority of the West Bank actually wants a one-state solution, because maybe they don't love the PA or the governments that they've been under, right? Like, is itself complicated, because the two places are have been under different rule for so long now that they actually, their opinions have diverged for real reasons on the ground.
They have different access. They have
different war. I mean, we talk about aggression and terrorism and what Israel does. Like, they've experienced Israel in very different ways in Gaza and the West Bank. And I think we're very quick. We're very quick to try to think about them in the same terms.
I will admit that in the last 2 years, there has been a big rise, unfortunately, in extremist settler violence towards
in the West Bank. Yeah,
in the West Bank. Thankfully, well, it's difficult because for such a long time, the numbers were extremely small. Those numbers have grown, and I'm happy that better late than never that finally there's condemnation coming out from, let's say, religious rabbis, bigger community leaders, more people coming out against it, really, because
well, let's talk about this for a second. So last week, of a little background, last week there was a major I think it was a TV interview, right, with
Yared. 2 weeks ago, I sent this to what's his name?
Oh, so 2 weeks ago. So Yared. So
there's a podcast.
Yeah, it was a podcast. Thank you. Okay, so not TV interview, podcast with one of the leaders of the Hilltop Youth. So the Hilltop Youth are usually the ones at the center of violence against Palestinians and churches in the West Bank. And actually, some of the churches not even just in the West Bank, but other places. The Hilltop Youth are massively, I don't know, massive is the wrong word. They were a very complicated little fringe group of basically boys who didn't really fit in to other institutions. Women as well. There were some women. My impression is it's very male dominated. Right? Yeah, it's mostly men. It was a lot of basically what we would call like soccer hooligan types, and there's druggies, and there's a lot of homelessness in this population, and they were basically finding places to live in the West Bank, and they found certain
Right,
rabbis.
illegal settlements,
right? They were illegal
also
settlements,
considered illegal by the government
kids
and the
Yep,
population.
Right. Israel considered them illegal, not just the international community, who considers everything in the West Bank illegal that's Jewish, but like even Israel considered this illegal, what they were doing. They tried to get rid of them multiple times. They kept getting rid of these homeless encampments, basically. Homeless might be, what we picture in the U.S. as homeless encampments a little bit different than what these look like, because there's a lot of trailers and stuff, but basically they're homeless encampments. It's the closest mapping I can think of. Anyway, one of the leaders of this group, and this group was very tiny. After 2005, when Israel pulled out all the Jews from Gaza, this group grew pretty significantly. And a lot of the young kids or teenagers who had been in Gaza living there now like kind of filtered into these groups. And also this group then matured. So that's 20 years later, right? So people gained leadership skills and kind of
Boys
organizational
became men.
skills. And one of the leaders of this group was Yared. I can't remember what's his first name.
I should just mention, and all of them also went to the army as well.
And yes, they went to the army.
I'm saying they're also gaining skills as well.
They gain skills, but they tend to be fairly anti-army. Because the army gets rid of them and tries to take them out of where they live many times, and
they attack the army,
yes,
which is like
they shot at the army, and
the biggest taboo in Israel.
Right.
Like
they've basically violated the social contract, the Israeli social contract. Because they fired on the army. They are and then there was this interview of one of their leaders that was, I would say, it was probably the most generous interview that has happened of a Hilltop Youth, that really tried to listen to what they were saying, their concerns, really tried to understand their perspective well. And it was not just, and it became very clear. I knew this for years, that the Hilltop Youth were growing, and their support was fairly significant, and it wasn't just a tiny group. There are people who have been saying this. Tag Meir, for instance, who've been tracking the tagging attacks, right? Like they have been saying this for years. This was clear, right? But it was not clear to the whole Israeli public, especially to the religious Zionists, kind of, and especially even within the settlement community.
I would just add here also.
Yeah.
And this is a problem also, how this is talked about, but it's also always in comparison to Palestinian violence, let's say, and because also the number is still significantly smaller, it just never hit a critical mass where like.
Right. They didn't cross the threshold of salience for most of the Israeli public. And then there was this podcast, and this guy comes on and talks about how many people support them, what their organizations are like, how mature these organizations are, what their values are, which are abhorrent. I mean, they're like, talk about aggressive, imperialist, colonial, like all of the things that you're talking about there. I think Pep might have left because I haven't seen him in the comments for a little bit, but like all those comments,
converted to Judaism,
just awful stuff from this guy. But like being given this platform, in some ways, it's kind of like when Fuentes got to talk to Carlson, like a fringe person getting a big platform, and then suddenly everyone's like, it comes to everyone's attention and salience and hits relevance realization, and then people realize like how big of a thing this is, and this isn't such a small fringe. And now in response, before this, a couple rabbis here and there had been like, we condemn this. Usually individuals. It was really rare to have like a big group. There was one big group after the attack. I can't remember what that city was called, where there was there was a very big fire attack and a couple people died on one of the Palestinian
kids in
Duma. Thank you, on Duma. Speaking of Duma, Stephen, Duma. Because we've been talking about Masad Duma for a couple weeks now. But yeah, so there's the attack on Duma. There was a big statement put out by a number of rabbis after that. That was basically the only time that there was really hit mass salience, the critical mass for salience.
I would also add that it's specifically because of the war right now, it's also the focus of Israel now looking at this is not only are they horrified by this, but there's also a sense of like, and all the country is like in mid-war right now. Like how are you?
Bombs are falling.
Correct.
Like, literally, bombs are falling on your street, right?
Like so on the social contract level, on let's say even from let's say the more extreme Zionist level would be like redemption's happening. Like even if you want to do that, you got to be Machiavellian about it. Like this is horrible optics and politically to be doing this even now when all eyes are on
Forget
Israel.
optics. It's horrible optics, but it's also like horrible, like ethically, this is just so
no, but
wrong.
I'm saying obviously ethically. I'm saying even on the level of, let's say, even it's like it's a thorn in the eye because like on all the levels is just insanity that they're participating this way.
Yes, they're making everything much worse by what they're contributing to the war, the ethics and the perception. They're making everything worse. And now, like maybe it was good he had that interview, because now there's actually like a real mobilization of like decrying and saying this isn't us and we're rejecting this and this ideology, and like we're gonna actually put up real walls and barriers between us and these groups that like were not as formalized as before. And that's great. And I think that I know that there's a group of Israeli Orthodox rabbis who are preparing such statements and joint statements. America has generally commented on these things less, American rabbis, but this has actually raised to the point of salience where they believe they're also preparing a joint statement for condemning it, which is great. It took them way too long, in my opinion, but better late than never. Adam. Oh, I don't want to get it. So Adam, a lot of the Hilltop Youth were connected previously to an organization that tried to break up mixed Muslim-Jewish marriages. And it's a very, and that one actually had a rabbi involved, unlike the Hilltop Youth, which do not. And that was,
but even insane. There, Yosef, there were people that really needed rescuing in a certain sense.
Yeah, but it was an excuse. They used a small sample of abusive marriages that they could identify to then generalize and say we need to break up all these marriages because they're all going to end up in abusive.
But I want to just say, like you said, years ago it started that way, and that's why like the attention it also got. Even if people were against it, it just wasn't, like you said. It didn't reach their salience. As these kids grow older, and as the agenda clearly turned into, let's say, just insane racism. I also just mentioned about the churches as well, because with the Palestinians, many times the attacks are also sometimes instigated by, like, also attacks by the Palestinians. It's not so clear cut. With regards to the Christians, it's like a non-issue. You don't have Christians trying to like do moves like that in Israel, and like even coming out against them. It's just, and I would say these people that do this, there's a lot of cross-pollination also with the very rare occasions of people spitting on Christians.
Yeah, and even there, it's complicated because like we have multiple people in BOM who know someone personally who have Christians personally who have either been spat at or said something was said to them that was anti-Christian when they were in Jerusalem. So like I don't know what the real scale is, and I'm always like, I've been in the Old City. I've seen Eastern Orthodox processions. I've seen Catholic things in the street, and I've never seen someone spit. But at the same time, I know that I see and experience anti-Semitism that people around me have never noticed, right? And it's quite possible that like I'm just missing it, and I don't want to necessarily just say, "Hey, this doesn't happen. You guys are liars." Like I don't want to go there.
I agree with that. I just mentioned obviously living in Israel all my life, but also 6 years living in the Old City specifically, and then another 2 years of my son learning in the Old City as well. I've never once seen that, and I've been to all the good places, including in the Christian Quarter as well, obviously. And what I do see is signs saying that like if that's abhorrent, horrible, and like we denounce that. So let's say I've never seen that. Having said that, obviously, I think you and I both agree that that's obviously horrible, and obviously the state of Israel thinks it's horrible, and all the rabbis that we follow say that's horrible. Someone was calling me out on Jacob's when Jacob and I didn't even realize he was on someone else's channel, and then this I forgot his name, Ben something Tropper got on, and he was like going on
Ben Thorpe.
Ben Thorpe, sorry, Ben Thorpe went on.
Ben Thorpe.
This other guy got on and said, like, you guys are making a mistake. Jews are emptying their pockets, right? Like right now, like I didn't bring up the settler increase in violence right now because like I'm trying to like flagellate myself or like I'm looking and saying like look at me. It's I believe this is because this is genuinely what we were taught to do, and this is how we're supposed to look at things. And obviously, if we see something bad or critical, we call it out, and I think the Israeli society calls it out as well.
Yes and no. I mean, I know it does. I know if you talk to Schlief, to Gidon, right? He'll tell you that there's this, that the media has betrayed the public by, mostly going with the government narratives, and like that there's this real. So like, yes, Israelis call it out. Yes, there's also politics like any other country, and there's like a lot of kind of crazy. Whatever it is. I mean, there's Protexia, there's, these old boy networks, there's these, we need to do solidarity right now because of a war, right? There's lots of reasons people like do what they do, but still like a normal country in all those ways. And so, yeah, the Israeli public calls it out. They're critical. Yes and no, right? There are parts that are, there are parts that like, have made a point of intentionally going with government narratives and ignoring certain stories. And it's, I think, I don't know that Americans appreciate this because our media landscape environment is actually, despite all the people who don't like the MSM, right? Like our landscape for media is actually still a lot more varied than the Israeli one in like huge ways, both at scale but also in diversity of positions. On the like, and it just is, and like
Israel has two channels in Israel.
Israel has
14 or all the rest.
It hasn't, right? Exactly. There you go. Israel hasn't restricted speech in the way that, like, I'd say, like other totalitarian regimes have. It's not, it's not China, and it's not Iran, and it's not Russia, and it's not even Qatar, but it's close to Qatar,
and it's not England.
And it's not England. Yeah, it's not England either, right? It's not England, but actually, England is probably the closest parallel in some ways to the system, because the Israeli system, I think, looked at the BBC and the English Broadcasting Licensing Agreement model as their model. And what England did was in some ways very similar. When it was a long time, it was kind of just like the government had all the channels, sort of, and then like they let one channel kind of be the opposition channel. And that was, I mean, even when I was living in England, that was kind of the same. It was still kind of working that way. Like you had Sky and you had BBC, and it was like Sky had a couple channels. They had more than one channel, but like they had a family. They had their network of channels, and most of the rest were kind of BBC affiliates and whatever. Our America doesn't work that way with our media landscape, and it's hard to appreciate other countries, even other Western countries, and by that I mean Israel and the UK. Just have a very different mindset around how they do media and what they allow on their airwaves. Podcasts are destroying that in many ways. I mean, that's why the Yared podcast is so revolutionary. Like it really pushes this boundary.
That guy, it's the name of the podcast is About Meaning, Al Mashmaut. And I think that's the number one or number two biggest podcast like in Israel. And like, it eclipses these other numbers out there. So like definitely that's, watching Israeli news is like, it's like a complete circus. It's like,
and in some ways it's like when cable started in the US. In some ways, I mean, the US, even before cable, was still more varied, I think, than Israel now, in its media. But it's sort of like the podcasts are now what cable was to us, where it really opened up.
Is it fair? Is it fair that a country, like I'm saying,
no, the scale is totally different.
Correct. So I'm saying also like the fact that they're all Jews. Also, like I'm saying, there's so much more in common.
Yeah, but look, they're all Jews, which means that they're all going to disagree. So the range of opinion.
I mean, first of all, that's true. Three Jews, three opinions. I get that, but Stephen, do you feel like this was a productive conversation for you to participate in?
I've enjoyed it. I wouldn't have stayed here if I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go really soon.
I've
heard like peripheral, combating back and forth between people in the space, and so it's nice to hear it fleshed out, so I know like what exactly the positions are.
Yeah, this is pretty. I think we're sharing like a lot of details, and again, like I don't. I also feel like maybe I don't know this about myself, but I feel like even if in the little corner, I would say both you, me, and Jacob are also fairly progressive. Like,
That's a dangerous word. Where are you going
I
with
know
that,
it
man?
is a dangerous word, but I'm saying like as far even like bringing in the whole Noahide element to it,
Oh,
like being off the bat, being open to understanding that like there's a whole collective happening around us, and there's other people, other actors that we need to be participating with. I'm just saying,
yeah.
like heaven forbid the TLC saw something like a Yared was like on a place like this, like that'd be bad news bears.
Look, no, but you know what? I know you're not super active in BOM, but like in the politics dumpster fire, we have a couple posters who regularly post anytime Israel does something bad or they hear bad news out of Israel about Jews. And I don't have and like people are not unaware of all this stuff, honestly, in TLC. At least there's certainly a group of politically active people who do see this stuff a little bit, and I don't have a problem with that. Like I'm not trying to hide it. In fact, sometimes I'm the one who posts some of those articles. Not
Yeah, but do
usually.
they see you as a kook or an outlier?
In what sense? As far as Jews go?
Yeah.
I don't know because I think a lot of people, a lot of Americans in TLC who know Jews who probably are pretty left progressive against this war. To Pep's point, he said, like I think somewhere in the comments, Pep
Orthodox.
said,
Orthodox.
Orthodox, but they don't know Orthodox Jews. They have nothing to base on except for us. We're the only Orthodox Jews probably that
Right,
most people have
but
ever
that's
seen.
my
Yeah.
point.
So they
Like,
wouldn't know. They wouldn't know if we're outliers or not. I mean, beyond maybe seeing a couple on YouTube, right? Like they're not.
I think
No, but when you
I
say
think that
Let Kirk-
sorry,
let-
Kirk, one more second. When
No, no,
I
no.
say I'm
Let a
not an
non-Jew
outlier,
talk.
well,
Let one of
No,
the
it's okay.
non-Jews
Go
talk
ahead,
about
Hezi.
perception.
please, Kirk.
I was just going to say, I think most non-Jews in North America know Jews through Kafka and Seinfeld more than they know it through any sort of Orthodox Jew.
It also depends on where they live, right? Americans who live in New York and LA have seen Orthodox Jews. Outside of those two cities, it is very, very rare for someone to have seen an Orthodox, much less become a friend of one. I mean, Hagababa has complained to me that the only Jews he knows are non-Orthodox in Texas. I mean, he likes the Jews he knows. He goes to the JCC all the time. But like he wishes he could meet more Orthodox Jews. And I told him, I know Orthodox Jews in Texas who'd be happy. I'd be happy to like put him in touch with, where I think he's outside Boston or something. I'd be happy to introduce him to people, right? But like, yeah, like it's such a small segment. It's such a small segment of the population outside of those two cities that like, yeah, the chance that you're going to run into, I mean, is small. It's not zero. I mean, I think Stephen, you've had experience with Orthodox Jews before you came to the corner, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, in my town, in one of the wineries in my town is run by Orthodox Jews.
Yeah, is Kedem, right? Kedem's by you. You're right. So like
they're half a mile away.
There you go.
What do you think about that wine? Good stuff.
And I was town supervisor, so I used to have to deal with them because they were always asking for things.
Is it good wine?
I had many meetings with Michael, who ran the place. He was great.
Yeah, and that's great, but that's what it goes to is it depends on what part of the country. Like for example, before I converted, I went through a conversion process to conservative Judaism, and I messed myself with the Jewish community. But before that, all the Jewish people I knew were basically what you might call sort of the Seinfeld type North American, like Reform kind of culturally Jewish, but they were not. I just didn't know a lot of Orthodox Jews because most parts of the country, especially here in the Southeast, it's just not that common.
But
Yeah.
Yosef,
I used to live in the Southeast, but yeah, I know. It was weird.
In the political, on the Discord, right? Are you, when you say, but no, majority of Orthodox Jews, like, think X, are they like, okay, that's good enough that Yosef sells me? I'm like, no.
Yeah, I think I try to be pretty fair. I try to, I don't try to do super broad sweeping generalizations. I say, if I see a Hilltop Youth thing, I've explained, before that they're like a pretty small segment and they're not really Orthodox. And like, I mean, that's also an important thing is they're sort of in their own religious space, but a very weird religious space, honestly. From what I know, you probably know a lot more about it than I do, but
Nuts.
But yeah, I try to, but so I try to be fair and not overgeneralize. But yeah, I think generally because I do that and I try to be balanced. What I say is, I'm not saying that everyone says, everything else it says is the truth and, we're going to accept it, without any grains of salt. But like, I don't, I think it's generally understood that I'm trying to say what I know is to be true of our world.
Yeah, what I like about the Orthodox space that we're in here is the degree of introspection, and the I think generally the humility is shown, but the degree of introspection is just like, for me, it's just admirable. It's like I could listen to that forever.
Yeah, and I'll say, can I say something that'll be controversial here?
Mhm.
There is a special place in my heart for Kafka Jews. There's a special place in my heart for secular Jews because that's kind of the people who I grew up around. Like, I know Orthodox Jews believe that they're not living up to the mitzvot, but there's a special place I have in my heart for the idea that even though they're not living up fully to the mitzvot, that they have this potential within them.
I'm he we have a cookie in here.
For sure. I'm saying, of course. I mean, that's my jam, right? Rev Cook talks about how, speaking about the land of Israel, how never before was there a generation that's so lofty yet so low, right? I mean, like, and do we know, Kirk, as you're saying, do I know how to calculate the mitzvah points of me keeping a Shabbat versus like a soldier dying to save the country or saving, like, or some kibbutz, like, I mean, Rabbi Akiva would be dancing to all these people for like the fact that they're doing this. So like, we have to be very careful when we judge. Number one. Number two, I also, since like recent polls and also like the last, because of the war, also 30 to, I think 25 to 30%, there's been like an increase in like in spiritual or religious connection. And if you bring in, let's say, the Masorti, the traditional, also, I mean, this is a separate fight I have. While I see myself in the Orthodox camp, I definitely am aware that like the old guidelines are not necessarily relevant for this generation anymore. Now it's very difficult because even through the Orthodox system, which I would like it to have some sort of level of reform, so to speak, that needs to happen within there's a bottom up element to it, as in which is happening naturally, but there also needs to be a system that allows you to contain that. And I would also say, in general, you always have this power, this messianic energy out there, but if it's not contained with a religion or with tradition, then it could go amok. So I think what you're seeing right now in Israel, part of what's happening internally in Israel is we are, as the people of Israel, renewing themselves in their land. We are rediscovering ourselves, and there's a new identity that we're trying to figure out what that identity is, and that is very scary. Both, they say Messiah. There's a discussion in the Talmud where these rabbis are discussing, trying to figure out when Messiah is going to come. And this other rabbi comes and says, like, stop trying to figure out when Messiah is going to come. He says there's three things that come during distraction: finding something, a bite of a scorpion, or the Messiah. And the attitude is the Messiah for some people is going to feel like they just found $20 in their pocket, or it's going to be for other people is going to feel like a scorpion bite. There's a sense where even Orthodox, and you feel this in Israel, there's people want a sense of Judaism or religiosity, but they don't like how it's being crammed down their throat in a certain sense, how it's involved with politics. And on the other hand, there's people that also want to be more open, but don't even know how to do that anymore. So this is very difficult. We have to figure this out. We are going through our own identity crisis while we have a very strong tradition, who we are, that needs to still be expressed in today's world. But we love the traditional person as well, Kirk. So that was generally my point of what I'm saying, which is,
Yeah.
You're not being Ruby. I'll give you something else. You can take on my.
I say this about Greta Thunberg as well. Like, I want the Greta Thunberg energy. I want the Columbia campus energy. That's like messianic energy. I just think it needs to be like reoriented a little.
Yeah, and is Kafka popular in Israel?
I mean, to a certain extent.
There are so many great Jewish authors. Kafka is not. He's good.
For example,
but
Heschel is having a revival now in Israel. A lot of his works were translated into Hebrew,
that's
and
very exciting.
and that's
That's
very
awesome.
exciting for me. That's fantastic. That's like, because I think, for example, very much now, like what a lot of people in Israel are looking for is very much that language. They're looking for. I mean, again, his book about the Shabbat or his book about the prophets, obviously, like, I mean, all his books are fantastic.
I mean, is Chorev popular? Because that's the big one.
I mean, Tarami Nashamayim is also
Tarshmanim, yeah, sorry, Tarshmanim.
Yeah,
That's the one.
Yes, I have that in 2 volumes, but that's a big ask.
Huge. It's a huge ask.
That's a big ask from people. Like reading Shabbos or reading the prophets is like, that's a lot more digestible, and like, anyone who wants to do more than that, they'll dive in more than that.
Yeah. The reason is just because I have only read excerpts of Kafka, but I've heard that he's very popular with some Ashkenazi communities. Are there any other Jewish authors you would recommend? Like I know Buber is also known for his poems, but like Kafka and Buber.
There's so many great ones, especially poetry.
Heiner Kana as well.
You specifically want modern, or you do you care about time period?
I would prefer like Hannah and afterwards.
Okay, so, I mean, gosh, where would you start him? I could do Rachel or Yehuda Amichai, or like there's
Yehuda Amichai.
Probably, yeah. I mean, it depends on what type of poetry you're looking for.
Rachel Mashoreret.
Yeah, Rachel Mashoreret, of course.
Or what's the one? Isaac Bashevis Singer.
So he's not a poet. He's a short story writer. He's excellent. His stuff is not. He's Jewish, not Israeli. He was one of the major translators. Well, translators is the wrong word. He retold a lot of the old Yiddish stories into English. He's a master storyteller. Actually, he's a great story with my mom and Bishop Singer years ago. My mom brought him in as a speaker when she was in college for a Shabbaton, and they spent a Shabbat together. And he's evidently a really cool guy. But he's a great short storyteller. It's weird. I mean, if you want like weird, like, Dybbuk, demon-y, like stories from like folktale stuff, like that's Bisheva Singer stuff, right? There's gonna be possession. There's gonna be like silliness. There's gonna be like the town drunk, and it's gonna be
Leah Goldberg, right?
Yeah, I'll check that out. The thing is, I'm not necessarily. Yeah, I'm not just looking for poets. Yeah. I'm looking for any sort of author because I'm looking to look more into literature. I'm not that knowledgeable about literature.
So yeah, Altman's a good one.
Do you like Micha Goodman?
I've never read a lot of Micha Goodman. Maybe.
He has a book about Moses. He has a book about the Kuzari. He has a book about 67, which is interesting. Cash 67, he calls it. He has a book about AI, and which is his more.
Yeah, but the question is like, what's been translated well? So, like, for instance, I remember doing something in high school. So I did a lot of Hebrew lit or modern Israeli lit in high school, and like we did an Amos Oz book, and I did it. I had originally read it in English, and then I read it in Hebrew, and I was like disappointed in the translation I had gotten, and I was like, this is a huge author in Israel. They could have afforded a much better translator. Like, why did they get this cheap one? Like, in my opinion, I don't know how much they actually paid him, but like in my opinion, it was like the quality was not there.
Aleph Bet Yoshua.
Oh yeah, they're good.
Yeah, I'll check some of these people out.
There's a huge library of really amazing authors, as any country has, honestly. I was into Polish literature modern Polish literature for a bit, and like Israel has a very vibrant literature scene. Israel's Book Week is like the best thing in the world. Every country should do Book Week. Israel's Book Week, Kirk, is like heaven. I don't like if I had to like imagine like a heaven that wasn't Aristotelian, Maimonidean, like this is what I would want.
It's also such a good vibe there too. I love it.
It's literally like it's all these books, every publisher, like religious, not religious. It's an entire. Is it 2 weeks now or 1 week? I don't even remember.
1 week, but also everyone's schmoozing.
And everything's cheap. They have amazing deals on everything. and like it's just books are in the air, and like it's just an amazing vibe. It's so
Yeah,
cool.
I'll check it out. The only Jewish authors I've read right now are some Leonard Cohen poems and some Heine's poems. Did you read any
Oh,
Heine in college?
nope.
I'm out, guys.
Yeah, I have to go
Okay.
too soon. I was gonna say, if you've never read,
Steven, take
so,
care.
so obviously, like the other major American, or not American, but the other major Jewish authors that are in English that a lot of people read are like Elie Wiesel and Primo Levi was a very big.
I've heard the name Primo Levi and Elie Wiesel, but I
So he
can't
was
think of anything about
I mean, both of them are survivors and have a pretty like Holocaust focused, but like they're awesome authors. Shalom Aleichem, who wrote the original Tevye the Milkman and other kind of Yiddish tales that became Fiddler on the Roof. Shalom Aleichem was like an important Yiddishist, so he preserved Yiddish as communities
Yeah,
were
I know
destroyed.
there's the YIVO Institute
Well,
for Yiddish
Yeah,
Mandelstam,
Studies.
YIVO is cool. I have a number of friends who are involved in YIVO, though YIVO's pretty like it's very, very liberal. If you're looking at kind of more political philosophy, obviously there's a lot of Jews who for political philosophy. That's a whole other world. But
Like
you want
Robert,
literature.
are you talking
You want
like
real
Robert
literature.
Nozick? Are you talking like with Nozick?
I was thinking like Hannah Arendt, right? Like major Jewish
No,
political, right?
I thought you were
Michael
talking.
or Michael Chabon, right? Like Michael Chabon wrote he's a couple bestseller Pulitzer type things in the past couple of years. Cavalier and Clay was one of his big ones, and in
Yeah,
the Jewish Policeman Society, which I think is better than Cavalier and Clay. It's about alternative history where Jews end up in Alaska, and it's
yeah.
instead of
Well,
it's really fun.
in terms of Jewish political philosophy, I met a guy named Alan Kunsky at a synagogue that I was going to, and he said that there's a big tradition of Jews and libertarianism. He mentioned Ayn Rand, Robert Nozick, Murray Rothbard, von Mises.
Well, Ayn Rand is not Jewish, right? I'm pretty sure.
No, Ayn Rand was Jewish, Russian
What?
Jewish.
Okay,
Very,
I don't remember
very
that.
Russian Jewish, not
I mean,
religious.
Arthur Miller, Death of a Salesman, right? Arthur Miller is pretty famous. He's
Yeah,
Philip
and
Roth.
there's also in terms of literature, there's also Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Although he's
Yeah,
only
I dislike that book. I would never recommend it. I so dislike that book. I can't tell you. Tony Kushner, Angels in America, right? He's Jewish. I forgot about that.
yeah.
There's so many Jewish authors, but like if we were looking at Israeli literature and Jewish literature, like they're totally different, right? Israel has its own world of authors, and the style is much. They use a lot more biblical idioms. Like even the secular ones are just like so much more entrenched in Jewish biblical and historical thought in a way that the American ones are simply not. The American ones will know kind of Jewish American culture references, right? They'll have that, but they don't have like the religious kind of thickness. Like even a very, very like what we would consider the new atheists, like our authors who are part of the new atheists in Israel, like they still use biblical idioms in every paragraph. Like, because they can't not just because Hebrew has that, but just because like literary Hebrew especially is very, very biblically focused.
Definitely, and I'll check out a lot of these people. I'm interested in not just Israeli literature but Jewish literature. In terms of Jewish philosophical literature, I know there's like Husserl and Popper and
No, that's not Jewish philosophical literature. Levinas, read Levinas.
Husserl was Jewish.
Husserl was Jewish and lost his job because Heidegger threw him under the bus with the Nazis. But like, Husserl knew very little about Judaism, if I recall, and I wouldn't consider anything he wrote Jewish. Levinas was one of his proteges who was very Jewish and takes Husserl and takes his critique of Heidegger and his own critique of Heidegger, especially after the war, and combines them with Buber. And that Levinas's philosophy, which is the only like maybe the only French philosophy, post-war philosophy I might like recommend. Lacan, maybe parts of it, but like Levinas is great. And Levinas, for instance, takes his philosophy and then has books called like where he does like reads Talmudic stories through his philosophy, and he's fascinating. He's not particularly super religious, but he's very, very close with Buber.
Well, there's
he's great.
There's I mean there are some Jews who are not like. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I'm not a big fan of Freud or Marx, personally.
See you guys. This was fun. I think I've been on for like 4.5 hours. This is crazy. Between all these streams, I need to go. My kids are home. Talk to you guys later.
The one poet you didn't mention was Mandelstam.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'll check out
Mendelssohn's
Mendelssohn.
good
Yeah,
too.
he was big in
Yeah.
Jewish or
So
Reform
that
Jewish
would be
theology.
fun. See you later.